What? What is this?
So slow to catch on.
Look at those monsters!
Relax, beautiful.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Typewriter Sessions. As always, I'm Brett and I am joined by James.
Hello!
And we are back doing Resident Evil 2. So this is part 2 and we're just going to get straight back into it. So as mentioned in our last episode, we closed off with Capcom releasing Resident Evil 2 in January 1998 and in the UK and the rest of Europe in April 1998. So what were we presented with? Well, yet again, I've got my copy of the game here. And yes, this is my OG copy. I didn't sell and rebuy or anything like that. It's not in bad nick either. It's got a bit of a crack there, unfortunately, in the bottom corner.
Those PS1 cases weren't the most robust.
No, definitely not. But I think all in all, I mean, the book's in pretty good nick as well. And I'll let you have a look over it, James. And see what you think.
Look at this beautiful thing.
Wow. And of course, game came on 2 discs. One with a beautiful picture of Leon on it. The other one with a beautiful picture of Claire on it, so you knew who she was playing as. And then you get a book with the usual odds and sods in.
You do.
I think it's got character bios in it, hasn't it?
Let's see. We've got mission controls, special controls, a city crawling with confusions. Nice little blurb setting up the game.
Confusion. Is that all?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the first thing that you think when you think about Resident Evil, isn't it? God, this game is so confusing.
So confusing. There's zombies everywhere.
Yeah, we've got Raccoon City's only hope.
Oh, Leon
Kennedy. Leon is an idealistic rookie cop. He burns with the need to protect and to serve. And life as a cadet was an eye-opening experience. While reckless and brash, Leon is certainly not as naive as his demeanour would suggest. He is highly qualified for his new job within the Raccoon Police.
Oh, bless him.
Shall I do Claire? Claire Redfield. Claire is a light-hearted, articulate, modern woman.
Modern?
While she can be a bit of a tomboy at times, she is somewhat wild. Self-confident and extroverted, Claire is typically the first person to try something many others would not.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Oh, but Ada and Sherry as well.
Oh, really?
They've really
Okay.
gone to town. Cool.
Yeah,
It's a very nice. I always loved the. Even though it's just a sort of generic zombie on the front, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just something about the mixture of that, the sort of black and white with the big bold red text. It's such a.
Yeah. I mean, me and Claire did mention in our episodes covering Resident Evil 1 that the Resident Evil 1 cover will always be absolutely iconic, and dare I even say it, one of the most memorable covers for a game ever.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think. You know, and I'm not being biased as a big Resident Evil fan, but I mean, even when you take into account some of the box art for The Legend of Zelda, which is one of my other most favourite franchises of all time, I've got tattoos of it all up my arm, but I don't think anything has been burnt into my fucking brain as much as the cover for Resident Evil 1. And I always felt like this was a downgrade because although it's subtle and it's kind of creepy because you can sort of make out that shape and face of a zombie there.
Yeah.
I just don't really feel like it had that same striking, like, bam, have some of that, you bastard. Like, I'm just going to grab my copy of Resident Evil 1 now. Like, look at that. I mean,
yeah, it is sort of night and day. That first one, the sort of the spiders and the bird feet and the.
That's it. I mean, it's like it's a menagerie of horrors with absolutely shredded Sylvester Stallone / Chris Redfield on the front, but
with his one squinty eye.
Yeah. But yeah, this is it, isn't it? It's absolutely iconic, that one.
Yeah.
And it's unmistakable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose the first version of Resident Evil 2 I ever saw in person, there wasn't even that one. It was the US version.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which obviously has completely different cover art, doesn't it?
And the font, I was never a big fan of the font with the 2 on it. I do prefer the text on the UK.
The big bold The big bold red block letters is far. It's just that is Resident Evil for me.
It is for me as well. That font is Resident Evil, and
that was the best thing about the Welcome to Raccoon City movie was that's the logo that they used.
Yeah, that's it. They really did homage to it, didn't they?
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like the cover for the US version with the sort of zombie creeping around, like what could be a door or something like that.
I think there's a hint of a door. It's more, or is the hand like creeping around the logo? I can't remember.
Yeah, bring up an image of it. Well, let's have a look. But I seem to remember it was. You couldn't really tell what it was. It was just like a black. I feel like it was a black thing, and the fingers were just creeping around it, and it could be a wall or something, and then you just sort of see the side, like half a face of a zombie, and it was a really cool image, I think. Let's see if we can find it. Actually,
you might be quicker finding it.
Let's see. Resident Evil 2 PS1 box art. Right, okay, yeah, so... Oh, it's hard to say, isn't it? It doesn't really... It's something. It's like blue, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not really clear what...
Maybe a wall?
Sort of,
Maybe a wall?
Just a sort of zombie creeping around a wall.
I would have preferred that. I'd have preferred that, definitely.
Yeah.
I think that's a good creepy image. It sort of does exactly what it says on the tin, doesn't it? I think if the perfect box art for it would have been our text
on that image.
Cover.
Yeah,
on that US image, definitely. That would have been like the perfect. Interesting though that our box art was the same as the Japanese one.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So, yeah. But it's of course it's beautiful as always, and it's always nice that you got the book. I always feel like a game is missing something now when you don't get a nice little manual.
It's the great lost art of the instruction manual.
It is, and they will, like I said in the episodes before, when me and Claire were talking about this, these companies will say that it's to protect the environment, but let's face it, it's a cost-cutting exercise, and it's to save them money. So bring back the instruction manual. That's what I'll say. But anyway, so yeah, unlike the previous game, as I just said, it comes on 2 discs. Leon and Claire's playthroughs came on their own. Each disc had a picture of the respective character on it, and there was a reason that each playable character had their own disc, which we will come to very, very soon. So the game, just like the previous, was played from the third-person perspective with fixed camera angles with real-time polygon characters on pre-rendered backgrounds. The player controlled the character using tank controls, which once again, and for anyone who didn't listen to our previous Resident Evil 1996 episodes and are unfamiliar with the phrase tank controls, this meant that up on the controller, move the character forward, left and right turning the character in their respective directions, with forward always being the direction the character is facing. This meant that regardless of how the camera angle changed, as you walked from one scene into another, as long as you were holding up on the controller, you'll be walking forward, and this stopped any confusion over which way was forward, regardless of how you appear in the next scene. So, players find weapons which need to be aimed, and the player can aim up and down depending on the enemy location or target. Players must also find health items which come in the way of first aid sprays and herbs, and a full explanation of the herb situation can be found in our original Resident Evil episodes, but I'm not going to go into that because I kind of feel like if you've got to this episode and you're a Resident Evil fan, you know how herbs work. So, item management, again, is a key element of the game, as players can only carry a certain amount of items, so ensuring you have the relevant resources to both defend yourself and progress through the game is vital for survival and progression. Players will expect to backtrack through locations of the game to open up new areas as they unlock doors and openings to new rooms which had previously been locked, and these are usually locked behind puzzles, finding keys in different locations, etc, etc. But while we're on the topic of puzzles, although they are a key part of the gameplay, with players solving puzzles in order to progress through the area, I'd like to say, in my personal opinion, that I felt this game was pretty weak in terms of puzzles, and I kind of felt like it was more of a series of fetch quests.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it had a lot of puzzle elements to it.
Yeah, there were a lot whereas the original game was a lot of sort of brain teasers and logic puzzles and sort of riddles that needed to be solved.
Yes.
Almost, I think 2 it is a lot more.
Go get that item.
Find this thing and then bring it back to this room. It was more the sort of difficulty in the puzzles was less about using your brain and more just about a lot of backtracking or remembering where the thing was that you needed to put the thing in.
Exactly. I mean, like there's a number of puzzles from the original Resident Evil you can sort of think of, and I think one of them, like you said, riddles really was clicking the buttons on the paintings in a particular order is an obvious one. And there's various others, like getting the code for the V-Jolt room where you make the V-Jolt. You had to get the numbers from the pool table.
Yeah.
And again, silly, stupid riddles.
Or the piano.
Yeah. You know, there's just so many things, which I felt like Resident Evil 2 just really didn't have much of that at all. Which was a shame, but there you go. I feel like one of the closest things I came to having a puzzle in Resident Evil 2 was when you have to, I think it was this anyway, I can't really think of any others off the top of my head, but in Resident Evil 2 when you go down towards the garage area, there's like some electrical switches you have to turn up and down to get the flow.
Yeah, that's right. You have to get the voltage right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and off the top of my head, I feel like that is probably the closest I came to having a puzzle. I think there's another one where you have to light 3 torches in an area in one of the rooms, and sort of Mr. X barges through the wall. That's another puzzle. But again, when a game as big as that, and they're the only 2 I'm really sort of pulling off the top of my head, that's not great. But anyway, I mean, obviously it didn't remove the fact that you had to go around the area in such a way that it was almost like one big puzzle, because you had to get this to get that to get this and to get that. But I never really felt like I was having my brain teased in the same way of the original. So Resident Evil 2 was ticking the Resident Evil playbook in regards to control system, puzzles and backtracking, but what else? Well, of course the game gave you 2 protagonists to take control of, just as you did in the previous game, but this time things were a little different. Leon and Claire both had their own individual personalised items, just like Chris having the lighter and Jill having the lockpick. But Resident Evil 2 was no different. Leon and Claire had the same exclusive personalised items, a lighter and a lockpick, respectively. Although Chris had the lighter because we learned he was a smoker, but we've got no real idea why Leon had a lighter, because...
Arsonist?
Yeah. Yeah, just in case you ever came across any petrol bombs or anything. Yeah. It's a good shout.
Or maybe he's one of those like skeezy guys that carries a lighter just in case.
Yeah.
Just in case a pretty lady needs a cigarette lit.
Hey,
this was the 90s.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, do you smoke? Of course I do. Gets his Zippo lighter out. Yeah, that's true. In fact, I have a friend who said that he used to carry a lighter around in case something like that happened. Smooth. And again, it was the 90s.
What's the equivalent of that now? Do people just need to carry like a USB-C with them just in case a girl's vapes run out of battery?
Like power bank. Yeah, power bank, or maybe a refill on juice.
Yeah.
Oh dear. So we don't really know why Leon had a lighter, and presumably Claire had a lockpick because she was a locksmith or a dirty criminal scumbag. I don't know, but she was a modern lady, though, apparently.
She was a modern lady. Bit of a tomboy.
And a tomboy. So, tomboys get
up to... But she could be a little wild.
Yeah, so that would explain why she had the lockpick. Unlike the previous game, where Chris and Jill had their own version of events, but one version of the playthrough did not address the other, Leon and Claire's stories were intertwined. Now, as we said in the previous episode, there is a version of events in Resident Evil 2 which is deemed the true versions of what happened in Raccoon City on that day, but in regards to what happened between Claire and Leon. So this true canonical story is considered to be what is known as Claire A and Leon B, and this refers to each character both having 2 versions of the game to play, and these are known as Scenario A and Scenario B. So if you played the disc in placed the disc in for Leon or Claire, you'd play through their A scenarios first. So you entered the police station from the main entrance and you did all that kind of stuff. But the main tyrant you would fight at the end was Birkin in his dog form. And then you'd get on the train and then that would be the end of it. But when you saved the game at the end, after you completed it, you would unlock the other person's B scenario. So if you played it as Leon first, you would unlock Claire's B scenario, and vice versa. So, as mentioned in our last episode, the B scenario meant you started from a different perspective, and you'd enter the police station from the rear. You'd bear witness to a helicopter crashing into the police station, and you'd be introduced to the tyrant Mr. X, who you would not come across in A scenario. So this character is completely exclusive to this play mode, and because I played Claire A and Leon A, when I was just like, oh, well, I'll just play through this B scenario, and I didn't know what they were. No. When I played it and I was from this different perspective, I was like, what is happening? I don't know what to do. And then when I came across Mr. X, I was like, ah! It really threw me off because, again, back then, you didn't have access to the knowledge of what games entailed or what to expect.
And that whole idea was such a novel, like, innovative concept as well at the time. There weren't, now the idea of games that have, if not necessarily different scenarios, at least like maybe like new game pluses. You've got games like Nier Automata that like you have to keep playing the game over and over again to actually like see the entire story. And even Alan Wake 2 has like, you only get the real sort of conclusion of the game if you play the final cut, New Game Plus version. So I'm sure there were a lot of people back in '98 that might not have ever realized that there was actually like a second perspective of the game that you could play through. Essentially, like a whole new version of the game. Because the way you approach all these different things is from a different angle and perspective, and the way that the order of the puzzles almost changes as well. And then you have a whole new area of the lab as well that you don't see when you play as in the A scenario. It was amazing, and this was another one of those kind of ideas which came from Kamea. As the troubled developer of Resident Evil, director of Resident Evil 2. But again, this is what was so amazing about him, is that like he shouldn't have been the director of Resident Evil 2. That much is a fact. Yes. But he came up with some amazing ideas, and like we said in the last episode, it was a good job that he was, because things went the way they did because of what happened. I am a big believer of everything happens for a reason, and clearly everything does happen for a reason, because who's to say we wouldn't have had the Resident Evil 2 that we did if things didn't happen the way that they did. So, but this kind of idea of, we're going to come to it very shortly. This was one of Kameya's ideas, and again, we'll come to it very shortly, but he referred to it as the zapping system. And this is where like you play through one version of the game and it affects what happens in the next. Yeah. So, but yeah, we're gonna jump it a little bit by going on about that anymore. But we'll come to that shortly, and we'll cover that. So yeah, again, like I said, just imagine the terror of confronting this guy for the first time when you're pretty sure you've seen and done everything after completing the game once already. He just really sort of threw you off if you was like very proficient at the game and you've played it through so many times, and then you boot up this B scenario. It was a bit like, ugh. But your boss encounters will also be different, and the game will conclude after a final fight with Mr. X and fighting Birkin's final transformation as you escape the facility on the train, which we discussed in the previous episode. So essentially there are 4 different playthroughs to play, which are a little bit different because Leon and Claire's support characters being different. So you had both Leon A and B, and then Claire's A and B. So all 4 scenarios were a little bit different, again, because they all had their own, both Leon and Claire had their own support characters and narratives and story narratives. So if you think about it now, that's an incredible varied number of ways to play a game, and I love it because it gives you amazing value for money, which
you don't really get in a lot of games now that solely focus on a single player campaign.
No.
To have such a varied number of ways to play a game like that. Let's face it, a lot of games now, to ensure people carry on playing them, they'll include some sort of multiplayer system.
Yeah, or they'll just be arbitrarily open world,
Yeah,
endless busy work and
yeah, that's
collecting things for the reason of we've told you to collect them.
Yeah, just some sort of fetch quest, and then the only reason that they're able to expand on it, any other sort of single player campaign now, is by the way of DLC.
Yeah,
they release additional scenarios, and half the time as well, those scenarios don't always necessarily fit into any sort of real story narrative, and you can tell they feel a little bit shoehorned, but it's to give you a little bit more, and besides, you get a little bit more, but you have to pay for it. You don't get it for fucking free. So yeah, and I think it's great. And if you're listening and you're familiar with Resident Evil 2, we all know it wasn't just these scenarios which you got to play. There was a number of other unlockable features, but we'll talk about those soon. So, as I just mentioned a minute ago, by introducing these two scenarios, it really helped shape the way the story was told by the introduction of what was known as the zapping system. So, again, as I just said, this was the brainchild of Hideki Kamiya and was designed to give the effect of how one character's story affected the other. So Kamiya had initially thought of this idea back when he was a planner on the original Resident Evil, but it was too late into production to implement this, and they also struggled to find a way to make it work with the limited knowledge of the production on the system at the time. So this system was therefore going to be used in some way during the 1.5 build of the game, but was not implemented until they started production on what would eventually become the Resident Evil 2 that we know. So anybody who has played Resident Evil 2 will have experienced the zapping system, and the well-known effect of this is when the player opens a locker and is presented with two items they can take. They either pick a submachine gun or a side pack, and whichever one you take leaves the other one available for the other person. You can opt to take both and be a greedy bastard and leave the other person left with nothing, or you can leave them both. So, which is it's crazy because it wasn't remotely obvious when you played this the first time that doing this would have this effect on the person's B scenario. You get to that locker, and if you were just like, oh cool, 2 items I can take, I'll take them both. And then you played as Claire or Leon's B scenario, open the locker and go, oh great, I can get a submachine gun and a side pack out of here. What do you mean it's not there? So it wasn't remotely obvious that taking one of those items would affect the other. And I think to best articulate this, I'll refer to my playthrough I did on my YouTube channel. So I played through Claire's A scenario, and when I was presented with that choice, I actually chose to take neither, as I knew the submachine gun and the side pack would be better for Leon's B scenario because it's actually naturally harder. It's a harder playthrough. So I was like, well, if I leave both, I leave a better weapon for Leon, and they can carry more items, which means less backtracking.
Yeah.
So I actually left both because the A scenario is actually a fair bit easier. So this wasn't the extent of the zapping system at play though. Other instances were the biogas that you can deploy in the lab area. This seems like the right thing to do when you're told you can use it because it'll weaken the Eve plant enemies in the lab area. But although that is true, it does have an unfortunate side effect because when you play through your B scenario, prolonged exposure to the biogas makes those Eve plants stronger when you play through it in the B scenario. So, yeah, although at first it does weaken them, eventually they sort of like, I think the document that you read about it sort of says that they kind of like adjust to it and then they get stronger through it. And they spit out like poison shit at you, and it's annoying. So I actually forgot about that when I played it through on my playthrough. I was like, oh yeah, use the gas, and I was like, I actually think I shouldn't have done that. I think I should have actually left that for when I do the B scenario. But anyway, yeah. Another example of this is it's also in the lab. There's a room which is locked behind a fingerprint ID system, so the player is able to log the character's fingerprint into the system to gain access to a room, but you will only be able to access that room in the other character's B scenario. So you put your fingerprint on, it logs it in the computer, and then when you play it as, say if you've done that as Claire, when you play it as Leon, for example, in the B scenario, you put your fingerprint in and it'll unlock the door. You cannot get into it in the A scenario.
It needs both.
Yes, it needs 2 fingerprints. And so if you play it as Claire first time round, put your fingerprint in. When you play Leon's B, put your fingerprint in, then you can get in.
God, that must have been maddening for people playing that for the first time.
Exactly.
Being presented with just like a room, a door that there's obviously something important in.
Yeah, and you can't get in.
But it's like, what do you mean it's not open?
Exactly, and I think that's crazy that like it wasn't remotely obvious yet again that is what you had to do.
Yeah.
I think it's so fucking cool that they did that. But yeah, and then when you get in there, I think there's a submachine gun. But if you have the submachine gun already, you get ammo, and I think there's a couple of bits.
Yeah.
But the main thing that was in there was the submachine gun. So yeah, if you took the submachine gun in the A scenario, you can still technically get it in the B, but it's actually towards the end of the game. But it's quite handy for your final fight if you need it. So as I just explained, I used Claire to log that fingerprint and then B and it does say here that you get the submachine gun or you get the ammo. So anyway, I kind of said all that without even reading my script, but never mind. Another example of the zapping system is the giant mutated crocodile found in the sewer. In scenario A, the player will come across the giant crocodile while trying to reach Sherry or Ada, depending on your chosen character. There was a nice little trick to killing this giant behemoth, and that was to release a propane tank, which the crocodile will scoop up in its mouth, and just a single shot from your handgun will blow its head off.
Yeah.
This will remove the encounter with the crocodile from scenario B. But if you battle the crocodile with just your guns and you don't use the propane tank, eventually the crocodile will retreat and leave the area, and it will reappear in the scenario B where you can kill it for good. But I have no idea why you'd do that when you can just kill it once with a single shot from your handgun. Why would you do this? But either way, the fact that the two did carry over.
Yeah.
And it's just another cool thing of the whole zapping system. And another one was, a lot of players probably will have come across it, but it's not as memorable as the whole submachine gun hip pouch thing. Is there's some shutters on the windows in the RPD?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, everyone has come across it where you find a cord, you put it in the fuse box, it drops some shutters to stop the zombies coming in, but regardless of what you do in the B scenario, those shutters will fail and they'll pop open.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's annoying. There is a hack, however, which will stop the fuse box from shorting out and causing the shutters to retract. Because the trigger point for this is entering the library in scenario B. So doing this in both scenarios is what causes the zombies to come in. So if you do everything that you need to do in the B scenario and then you cut through the library, at a certain point, it's like the very last thing you do. You don't actually need to go through that corridor anymore, and the zombies coming in will mean it's irregardless. You can completely skip them altogether because you'll be finished with the police station anyway. Another feature which was added into Resident Evil 2, which has now become a staple for the series going forward, was the character animation after taking damage. We mentioned this in the last episode, but originally it was intended that the character's appearance would change as you took damage. So the character becoming bloody or the clothing deteriorating as you took damage. This became too difficult to implement in the new version of Resident Evil 2. But this was changed for something else, where if the character dropped into yellow caution health status, they'd sort of hold their torso and they'd run around holding the gun with just one hand. You could still run, and there was no real penalty to your speed, but you was clearly injured, and it was just an indicator to say you're not in the best shape. So the after that, the next thing would be you'd sort of develop a limp, and then you did have a penalty to your speed. So this became a real problem at that point, because if you were surrounded by quite a lot of zombies and you're taking quite a little bit, quite a bit of damage, getting away from them was now harder, because you know you didn't have the speed on your side to run away from them. So it was
either dragging your foot behind you, aren't you, a little bit?
Yeah, exactly. So you're holding onto your torso, you're dragging your leg, and at that point your option is either use any health items that you've got, if you have, or kill everybody. Otherwise you're doomed. So, as mentioned, this would become the norm for third-person perspective Resident Evil games going forward, and it's also influenced the countless Resi clones which have come after, all implementing this same battle damage animation to their characters. In my last episode, this has just reminded me, in our last episode we discussed the idea of wearing armour, and it gave you a boost to your health and to your stats, and they were physically represented by you wearing them. There was another... this did actually become a thing in another Resident Evil game, and that was Resident Evil 4.
Yes.
Because you could get the body armour, and that gave you a health boost, and it was physically represented on you because you lost Leon's signature coat and then you got the body armour. I actually forgot about that when we was talking about it in the last episode, but yeah, so it is something that did get implemented into a Resident Evil game somewhere down the line. So yeah, that's pretty cool. As for the rest of what makes Resident Evil 2 a Resident Evil game was, of course, the documents which you find along the way, which help pack out the narrative and the lore of Resident Evil. Now, as Resident Evil 2 was a much bigger game with great voice acting and a lot of dialogue to tell the story in a lot more detail than what the first ever did, something the previous game you just couldn't do due to the constraints and obviously the infamous voice acting of the original. They never could have told the story in the same way. But I kind of feel like this is something else that Resident Evil 2 lacked, was documents that really had an impact.
Yeah.
But I kind of feel like it didn't need it, because a lot of the story was told through conversations anyway.
Yeah, there were a lot more cutscenes, weren't there, that actually involved moving the story forward.
100%, yeah, definitely. I mean, all the main characters who played a part in the story had their moment in the way of some kind of cutscene and helped drive the narrative forward. I think probably the main document, I feel, which packs out the story or implies some sort of background for a character and how Umbrella and everything, is probably Chris's diary, because he explains who Chief Irons is, what an absolute prick he is, and what Umbrella are doing. And I kind of feel like that's probably one of the key documents, unless there's one I'm forgetting and there's others, but for me that's probably the one that really sticks out the most in terms of packing out the lore of Resident Evil.
Yeah, and also sort of filling in a little bit of the gap of what happened to Chris after the Spencer Mansion. Yeah,
and stars in general.
Yeah.
Where did Chris go, but what happened to the others? The fact that they were just not believed.
Yeah.
But then obviously Umbrella did their part in that, to make sure that no one would believe them. And the Irons was involved in that as well. But there are other documents which kind of help pack out the whole corruption of the police, the control Umbrella has over Raccoon City, but I just don't think they all had the same impact as some of the documents found in the original Resident Evil. And to be fair, has there been, I think I even said this in the Resident Evil episodes we did, but has there been a document since the Itchy Tasty document of the Keeper's Diary?
No, not that it's become sort of part of the kind of lexicon of the franchise.
Yeah.
Nothing's had that impact where it's become a sort of meme, has it?
Yeah, that's it, almost. I mean, that's exactly it, isn't it? Nothing has had that level of impact where you're like, oh wow, I've read a document here of someone turning into a fucking zombie.
Yeah.
That really did have. It's iconic. It's iconic of the series, and dare I even say it, of the zombie genre in general. I think. Yeah, I think so anyway. So, we talked last episode about the weapons of the game. Now, again, there's a nice array of weapons. You didn't just have a pistol and a shotgun that were sort of unique. Well, not unique, but they were the standard, like they were in Resident Evil. You know, the shotgun was the same, the handgun was the same. Leon and Claire pretty much had unique weapons. So even down to the handguns. So the model of handguns that they had was Leon used Heckler & Koch VP70, while Claire used the FN Browning HP. Essentially the same in regard to damage, but Leon's did have some advantages over Claire's. Leon's gun stored 18 bullets where Claire's holds 13. Leon's gun can also be upgraded with a stock and a 3-round burst fire mode, meaning this can be good against enemies which were maybe a little bit stronger than zombies, but Claire's is probably only good against zombies and dogs, but Leon's upgraded version can still be useful beyond that. Ada uses the same gun as Claire, but she holds hers slightly turned to the side like a gangster and has a slightly faster fire rate.
Because she's bad.
She's a badass. She's a gangster. Leon has use of a shotgun, which is a little smaller and more compact to that seen in the first original Resident Evil game. The shotgun was a Remington M1100P, and it can be found in 2 locations when playing through as Leon. In Leon's scenario A. It can be found either in the Kendo gun shop at the start of the game when it's on Kendo's body. So if you stay in the shop to kill the zombies, it can be picked up off Kendo's body. If not, you can find it in the gun locker inside the STARS office. In Leon's B scenario, it's simply found on the reception desk in the main hall of the RPD.
Oh, that's helpful.
Yeah, right next to the bell. The shotgun can be found. The shotgun can be a one-shot kill on zombies again if aimed up at the zombie's head when in close proximity, just the same as Resident Evil 1. I'm actually just replaying the remake at the moment, and it pisses me off that is not a guaranteed kill.
Really?
If you aim at that, no, it's not. You have to get it really specific. They have to be pretty much lunging at you to at least. It's still not even a guarantee. It is the window is. It's like smaller than a gnat's arsehole.
Is that the game in general, or is that like difficulty level specific though?
As far as I'm aware, it's game specific.
Wow. So it's not just like if you're playing it on like one of the harder modes that they reduce the sort of the hitbox or.
Well, the pistol has a small percentage chance of a critical hit on a zombie. If you can instantly decapitate with a pistol. Now, which is pretty cool. We're going off topic here. We're talking about the wrong game, but the shotgun, which is obviously how we got talking about this, but the shotgun is now not a guaranteed kill with a headshot. Well, if you aim upwards, you have to be really. Honestly, the timing is ridiculous.
No, it does seem insane.
Yeah. Well, because before it was like, well, there's a zombie, I only have to use one shot to kill it.
Yeah.
But now it's like, well, it might take 2. Fucking annoying. So, but thankfully in this, it was the same as the original in the fact that you could just aim upwards and you could decapitate a zombie with one shot. One thing which was great about the shotgun as well with this is that just shooting straight, if you had a group of zombies, the spread of the fire could take out quite a few zombies at once, which was really, really cool. Sometimes it could even like completely eviscerate them and you'd have them crawling on the floor with no legs, which was so fucking cool. I really liked that. Great crowd control technique, and it's saved me in a pinch before. The shotgun can be customized. You can find shotgun parts which give it a stock and an extended barrel, making it more powerful, and it gives an even sort of like wider spread. A shot to the body on a zombie again completely splits them in half. Then it can even just also completely obliterate the torso. So, although you can guarantee a kill by aiming upwards, you can just shoot them straight and it'll just kill them, and they've got no body left. It's just fucking awesome. The shot is also powerful enough that it animates Leon in a way that he's slightly pushed back.
Yeah.
It actually does move him backwards as well. And it does have a slower rate of fire. The shotgun holds 5 rounds. Claire has an exclusive use of a bowgun, so instead of the shotgun, she gets a bowgun. The player can find this in a couple of places. Again, it's on Kendo's body if you stick around, just like Leon. The other option is to retrieve it from the RPD parking garage cabin. But in Claire's B scenario, you can retrieve it from the weapons locker in the STARS office. So the gun is generally inferior to Leon's shotgun in that it's not as effective on the larger, tougher BOWs, but it holds up to 18 bolts and it can kill a zombie in a single shot if close enough, as the bow gun will shoot 3 bows at once in a spread. It's not as effective in the sense the player can simply aim upwards with the shotgun and decapitate a zombie for an insta-kill, but it is still decent because of its 3-hour arrow spread, and it can be useful for crowd control on larger groups of zombies. Unlike Leon's shotgun, though, it can't be upgraded. The Magnum is a Leon exclusive weapon and is found in the guardhouse/staff break room during Scenario A in the RPD station. This is the room near the shutters you have to bring down with a cord. During Scenario B, it's found in the STARS weapons locker. The gun is clearly a fictionalized copy of the real gun, the Desert Eagle .50. It holds 8 rounds rather than the real gun's 7 bullet capacity, and this gun also has an RPD symbol on it, meaning it must have been some kind of standard issue. The player can find a weapons locker later on in the game, and it needs a key, which you find by illuminating an area with a flare gun, and it's like twinkling on the floor. This key is then used to unlock that weapons box in the lab, and it gives you Magnum parts. The barrel is extended, and it makes the gun the most second powerful weapon in the game, right behind the rocket launcher. The gun is so powerful, like the shotgun, it staggers Leon, and it causes a slight drop in fire rate. As always in Resident Evil games, bullets for the gun are something of a rarity, and it's best to hang on to them for boss battles. It can kill all enemies other than bosses in a single shot, and if there are zombies grouped together, it has the possibility of killing the zombies stood next to your intended target as well. Yeah, so quite good for a gun which literally just fires a single bullet.
Yeah.
That it can just somehow split itself and kill other zombies as well. Like, maybe it was because it was that fucking powerful. The zombie stood next to him, had his mind blown at how amazing it was. Like, holy shit! Yeah. The grenade launcher is a weapon Claire finds in her playthrough. She'll find it either in the weapons locker of the STARS office in her Scenario A, or on the reception desk of the RPD in her Scenario B. The grenade launcher can be used with 3 ammo types, just like the first game. Those rounds being grenade, flame, and acid. Each ammo type has its own effects and benefits. Grenades have a scatter effect, and it's good to do in an area close to the player if there's multiple enemies. It's good all-round ammo. It's a good all-around ammo type, and it's probably the most common to find in the game. Acid rounds are the most powerful in of the ammo types, but also the rarest. It will kill most standard enemies with a single shot. And flame rounds don't knock enemies back or stun them like the acid and the grenade rounds do. However, it will continue to do damage over time due to the burn effect it leaves on enemies. It is especially effective on the ivy plants. The grenade launcher's appearance is based on the M79 grenade launcher, and each shot or shell needs to be loaded into the launcher after each shot. So the first game looks like it's got like a barrel on it.
Yeah.
And you don't need to keep reloading it, do you? But on this one, you fire a shot and then there's like an animation where she's putting the next shell in, like a classic sort of grenade launcher. The grenade launcher is superior against enemies, like groups of enemies such as groups of zombies or lickers, and the grenade rounds can kill zombies or knock lickers back with a single round. We've already mentioned the submachine gun and where to find it. This is a shared weapon for both Leon and Claire in the sense that both of them can acquire it from one place or another. And it's a fully automatic weapon, which we hadn't seen in a Resident Evil game before, so it was pretty cool to see. It was pretty powerful, and it had a high capacity for ammunition. Its ammo was counted as a percentage rather than numbers, meaning you could get a lot of use out of it. We also discussed earlier how you could get additional rounds for the gun, but this is the only way it can be done, is if you get access to that room in scenario B. It wasn't a gun that you could get ammo for otherwise. It's based on a Mach 11 with a vented barrel, and it took up 2 slots in your inventory, so it wasn't a weapon you could generally carry around with you regularly, as it meant less room for other key items and health items, which were necessary for progression and survival. The flamethrower was a Leon exclusive weapon and was found in the lab in both the A and B scenario. It was the perfect weapon against the ivy plants, and it took up 2 inventory slots and had a percentage ammo counter, just the same as the submachine gun. This weapon has no ammunition to find, so once the flamethrower was done, it was essentially useless. Although after its use in the lab, it was the end of the game anyway, so it's still useless. I always kind of feel it's weird, though, that that's 2 games now where they've had a flamethrower and you never find any ammo for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's that thing, isn't it, where it's just sort of a special weapon that you just sort of get to use once, go down and like have like one really cool moment with it, and then it's like, yeah, you're done.
But it's like, it's a shame that it's not even really, because it looks cool, but it's not actually that great a weapon either. I mean, it's not like you want ammo for it because it has so few uses, and it is only actually good against those plants. But it's just like, why give me these weapons? Why put it in then?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was even shit in the original Resident Evil. So it's just like, just don't bother. But it was, you know, whatever. It looks cool, but it's just pointless. It can be used to burn the vines in the lab bunk room, because there's like a vent shaft and it's got like some vines coming out of it. You can use the lighter to burn it, and it's kind of like a puzzle of how to get into that room by using the lighter. Yeah. But you can just use the flamethrower. You could also use flame rounds from the grenade launcher. The spark shot was another weapon. It took up 2 inventory slots, a percentage counter for ammunition, and there's no additional ammo to be found for it. Each shot uses 5% of its charge. This basically looked like a 2-pronged plug on the end of a rifle body. It fired a big arc of electricity and wasn't particularly useful against most enemies other than Claire's final encounter with Birkin. But it was otherwise a pretty crap weapon. Finally, we have the knife. An absolute waste of time, and this weapon only starts to have some actual purpose when you reach another game in the series, which is Resident Evil Code Veronica, because we'll discuss that in that episode. But otherwise, the knife in this version of the game, just like it was in the first, is a lot of shit. So, there are some other weapons in this game, but we'll cover those soon. So, in terms of voice actors and the cutscenes, one thing which differed massively from its predecessor in terms of the presentation was the lack of live action cutscenes. Now, Resident Evil 2 was made use of FMVs, or full motion videos. These computer generated cutscenes replaced the live action cutscenes, and I must admit, this was one place where at the time I felt this game took a massive step back in terms of quality, because I really liked those live action cutscenes, and it really helped give the game a feel of, it was like a cinematic piece. And I always kind of felt like it just made it feel like a game, which I know it was a game, but it just really made it, that bridge between a movie and a game had been lost.
Yeah, because I mean, in the original, it's sort of, though that opening scene really roots it in the sort of the B movie sort of territory that they were shooting for. It really like anchors that, you know, the sort of George Romero connection that was their inspiration in Resident Evil, was the sort of like Dawn of the Dead and things like that. It felt like that. Whereas I guess by the time the second game came around, developers were figuring out how to use the PlayStation more, and CGI was starting to advance in quality a little bit more.
Yeah,
and I think it was the sort of, by this point you'd already had stuff like Final Fantasy VII come out as well that had sort of pushed what could be done with these sort of like FMV cutscenes. And I guess that was just like what was. It was more impressive from a technological standpoint. Technological standpoint.
Like a Daft Punk song.
The whole game was like, it was all, computer generated. It was almost like a badge of honor that they didn't have to use live action anymore, even though in retrospect, it was.
There was a chance for it,
downgrade,
wasn't there? Yeah, I think so. And I get why they didn't do it. But when you look back at it, you kind of think to yourself, yeah, well, I kind of feel like it lost something.
Yeah.
Which is obviously why they did the commercial. They obviously did the live action commercial to sort of pay homage, most likely, to the original Resident Evil. But yeah, you're right. I mean, they would have had to have done it at some point, and I've got no doubt the idea of them, Christ, we've got to do another load of cutscenes with live action actors, and we've got it's going to be based in a city which is overrun with zombies. We're going into movie territory now, like that's a lot. I can totally understand why they didn't do it, but my 13-year-old brain at the time was like, boo, bring back the actors, this is rubbish. Yeah, I was a little bit disappointed, I'm not gonna lie. So anyhow, the FMVs were actually captured using stop motion poses using action figures, and then computer generated characters were overlapped.
Wow.
So, and also, fun fact, Ada is the only main character not to appear in a CGI/FMV cutscene in the entire game.
Oh.
This is because her character was redesigned and repurposed so late into production they were unable to create a CGI model for her and implement it into a cutscene in time for its release. So yeah, there you go. In terms of voice acting, well, this was definitely an improvement over the previous. As we said in our Resident Evil 1998 episodes, the voice acting of the game does have its own charm, which I feel it's unfair to say that it's just crap. I mean, yes, it's not good, but it does learn itself to that B movie thing you were just saying. But in terms of the actual voice acting quality, Resident Evil 2 made sure to step up their game. A whole host of actors who had a detailed resume of acting and voice acting were hired to play the characters of this game. I'm going to quickly run through some of these actors and actresses, but I do believe it would be great to do an actual episode that covers all of this stuff. Actors, voice actors, blah, blah, blah. So, firstly, we had Paul Haddad, who played Leon Kennedy. Paul had numerous credits over the years, voicing characters in X-Men the Animated Series, and numerous other animated shows, and he even starred in episodes of different TV series. But sadly, Paul died back in 2020 at the age of 56 after a battle with throat cancer.
Oh, very sad.
So, R.I.P. Mr. Kennedy. Bless him. Of the cast, Resident Evil 2, Alison Court, the voice of Claire Redfield, was probably, and perhaps still is, one of the most famous. Alison Court had already played a key and famous role under her belt when she'd played Jubilee in the X-Men animated series. Before this, she had a whole string of voice acting roles, and she continued to play Claire Redfield in a number of Resident Evil projects after Resident Evil 2. So Alison Court has continued to be very busy outside of her Resident Evil commitments, and she remains an active actress to this day.
Oh, that's good.
Sally Cahill, the voice of Ada Wong, is similar in that she lent her voice to the character of Ada Wong on a couple of occasions in Resident Evil 2, in Resident Evil projects after Resident Evil 2. She has had a few acting roles on her resume, both acting in TV shows and voice acting. Diego Matamoros, who played William Birkin, had a number of voice acting and live action roles before and after Resident Evil 2. His last being credited in 2024, so it appears he's somewhat active. Annette Birkin was voiced by Jennifer Dale, who, like Alison Court, the voice actress for Claire Redfield, got a very long resume in both acting roles and but in voice acting roles and ordinary acting roles for TV and movies. Voice acting roles include playing the villain Mystique in X-Men the Animated Series and a few other X-Men related projects. She also voiced the daughter of Thanos, Nebula, in the underrated and short-lived Silver Surfer animated series. Have you ever seen that?
I don't think I have, no.
It was good. It only lasted a season, I think, but the animation for its time was very good, and the storytelling was good as well. It was actually a very good series. It's a shame it got sort of canned, but it was at that time when Marvel were in a lot of trouble.
Yes. Are we talking? Must be talking 90s now.
Yeah,
When
100%.
Almost went bankrupt, didn't they?
Well, yeah, they were absolutely 100% on their knees, and it was because of X-Men that they were saved, really.
Yeah.
Rod Wilson, the voice of reporter Ben Bertolucci, has kept himself busy since starring in Resident Evil 2, with roles mostly in TV series. In regards to his voice work, he was the voice of Longshot in X-Men the animated series, and a few other Marvel characters in video games. And finally, Gary Crawford, the voice of Chief Brian Irons, not to be mistaken with Brian Adams, was a regular in TV shows from as early as 1965 all the way to 2013. He also voiced a number of roles, but alongside Brian Irons, his other famous role was that of the Mad Titan Thanos, again in the Silver Surfer animated series. But sadly, he passed away in 2020 at the age of 79. So, R.I.P. Chef. There is definitely a running theme of the projects many of the actors have crossed over into. This was because Capcom sought out American-sounding actors by hiring actors based in Canada. This was seen as a cost-cutting exercise, and it wasn't uncommon at the time for companies to do that. As discussed, Marvel also recruited many Canadian-based actors for their projects, and that's why many of these actors appeared in other productions together in things like X-Men and Silver Surfer. Fun fact, the actors for the roles in Resident Evil were selected from 10 auditioners for each role, and the voice acting was actually recorded before any cutscenes or FMVs had been made, so the cutscenes were built around the audio recordings. So yeah, it was quite interesting, really. But I think it also just shows you how they approached the acting this time round, because in the last episodes when we talked about Resident Evil, they simply hired those actors based on availability, like who was free. They didn't know how good they were. They had no measure of how good anybody was. It was literally who's free and who can do it and who kind of looks like what we need them to look like. Where this time, every single role had 10 people audition for them, and they were selected out of who was best out of that 10.
Yeah, and I mean, this time around as well, they've got the benefit of hindsight. They've had a year or two's, responses to those performances in the initial game. They knew, or you would at least hope that they'd, heard through the grapevine that, people enjoyed it, but maybe not necessarily for
maybe
for
not
the
all the right
reasons.
reasons. Yeah, exactly.
So it was in their best interest this time around to actually look for the best people for the job rather than just people for the job.
Exactly. Some people of actual quality. Now, I simply must address a problem I have with myself, because during the Resident Evil 1998 episodes, I never once addressed the production of music for that game. Now, this really upsets me, because we did mention on a few occasions how the music is just a key element to that game in terms of building not just atmosphere but tension and drama. And I just never actually gave credit to the person who brought that game to life through the brilliance of their work. I mean, we did sort of talk about how bad the soundtrack was for the director's cut, because the guy was apparently deaf, but he wasn't deaf. He was just a charlatan. But the people who need the credit for it, for the original soundtrack of the original Resident Evil release, and my God, do they deserve it? That was Makoto Tomozawa. Again, I apologize for any pronunciation of this which is wrong. Akari Keida and Masami Uda. And what an incredible job they did of the original. But of this team of composers, Masami Uda became something of a regular for the series and was the composer for Resident Evil 2, 3 and 4. He was the only one of this original team which returned to compose further installments in the series. The soundtrack for Resident Evil 2 is also fantastic, and it's so atmospheric you almost forget that it's even playing, if you know what I mean. It's like it's almost as it's almost as much of a part of it as the world you're walking around.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
It's so ambient, isn't it? It's amazing. It's such a good soundtrack. I mean, when you're walking around the main hall, I can hear it now, the music. But it's such a staple of that area. If you took that music out of it, it would be so empty. And it's almost like it's ingrained into the backgrounds. That soundtrack. And I don't think you always register that it's playing because it's just
No,
so
which for a game that is sort of kind of what you want, because you know, a soundscape in a game shouldn't detract, and it shouldn't distract either.
Yeah.
Like you shouldn't, you know, it shouldn't take your attention away from the actual gameplay or the story that's being told. But you know, bad as in was the case with, you know, RE1 director's cut, like bad music can take you out of an experience.
Yes.
But if you're not noticing, you know, at least sort of like specific, you know, you're playing through a game and you're not even really registering the soundtrack, that's probably a good thing.
I think so.
Because it means that it's just a you know, a complicit part of the experience. It's not on top of it or underneath it. It's just woven in seamlessly.
Well, I think it's hard, isn't it? Because it almost doesn't sound complimentary to say that you don't notice it, but it's only because you don't notice it because it's such an integral part that it only works when it's all together.
Yeah.
Because there are some amazing soundtracks where when you listen to them just as a soundtrack, the music doesn't do anything because it needs the scene. Yeah. So, I mean, like even some of Hans Zimmer's work, say like in the Dark Knight trilogy, there's some amazing parts of those soundtracks, which are so fucking epic, you know, just as is the case with a great many of Hans Zimmer's work. But there's parts of the soundtrack where it just goes completely flat, but it's because it needs the scene.
Yeah.
Don't make it's a bad soundtrack.
No.
It's just that he's got it so right that it only works when it's with the scene.
Yeah, compositional work should always complement the media that it's accompanying.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I think this is the thing. It's like it needs the scene, and that's what Resident Evil 2 is so good at. Is that every piece of music probably isn't something you'd listen to without playing the game.
No.
But obviously there are some really good soundtracks which you can. Have you ever heard the soundtrack for Dread?
Yes.
Fucking hell, that's a good soundtrack, that. And you can listen to that without the film.
Yeah.
That's a fucking awesome soundtrack. But anyway, we could talk about that for hours.
Yeah.
Because I'm a sucker for a soundtrack. I think the only part of the soundtrack for Resident Evil 2, which I did notice, and it actually did my fucking boxing, was the overly dramatic operatic music which plays when you're fighting Becky at the end of scenario A. It's like, it's so over the top, and it actually did my head in. It just stressed me the fuck out. I just, fuck off. So, anyway, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go listen to it, because it honestly, I'll just watch my playthrough. But that bit is so over the top. So this is always a fun part of typewriter sessions, the unlockables. I always love I love an unlockable. So upon completing the game, you get a grade for your playthrough. The score is ranked A to E, but the highest rank you can achieve is an S. So grades are determined by a number of factors. These are the number of times you save your progress, your number of deaths, number of first aid sprays, which is why it's best to have as many herbs as possible and use those instead. Time taken to complete, and also whether or not any other kind of cheats were used, such as infinite ammo. Resident Evil 2 had an amazing array of unlockable features, which also extended the gameplay, giving you a number of reasons to return to the game long after completing the main scenarios of the game. Which, when you think about it, there's a lot there anyway. So, you have the canon story of Claire, and you know what? Actually, I'm not even going to go over that. We've already talked about that, so I'll cut that out. Firstly, when it comes to unlockables, let's talk about special costumes. Love the costumes. So, like Resident Evil, a key is required to unlock a locker found in the ground floor save room in the RPD station. You can actually get this key the first time you play the game. You simply have to make it from the start of the game in Scenario A to the RPD without collecting a single item. If you do, a zombified Brad Vickers, the pilot of STAR's Alpha team who abandons his teammate due to the chaos of the dog attack, will be waiting in a passage down some stairs outside the main entrance to the station. Brad, however, is much tougher than a regular zombie, but killing him will allow you to gain the special key from his corpse. Take this key to the locker and you'll have access to some unlockable costumes. Leon had a choice of 2. A blue jeans and black leather jacket with a white skull on the back. It's pretty lame. And the other was a black tank top, green cargo pants, leather boots and an RPD cap. Also pretty lame. But the main cool thing about these costumes was that Leon would now hold his handgun on a side and with only one hand. So that was so fucking 90s, right? And it also meant that the rate of fire would now be slightly faster. So he would hold his gun one-handed, tilted on the side, and he could shoot it quicker. That was kind of a cool feature, even though his costumes were really shit. It's also quite random, but whatever, we'll go with it. Claire only got one costume, but she more than made up for Leon's poor show. Claire got a leather jacket with flames on the sleeve, a red bandana, red crop shirt, leather pants and cowboy boots ensemble. It was a pretty cool look, to be fair. But what was more cool was a design on the back, which was similar to the Redfield Angel made in Heaven mantra. On this one, there was a female dressed in what looks like a Greek Spartan armour, and it had flaming wings. The words on this were "Let Me Live," which was another Queen song from the same album, Made in Heaven. So another Queen reference. And, obviously there's some people who are really big fans of Queen. Again, this was the last of the... This isn't the last of the Queen references dotted around the Resident Evil franchise, and more will pop up as we cover the respective games in the future. Not only did Claire get this costume, but she got a bonus gun exclusive to her costume. This was the Colt SAA artillery pistol, which was basically an old Western pistol. When equipped, Claire would hold the pistol by her side, near like her hip, and she would shoot it by slamming the hammer down on the back of the pistol, with her other hand, like in the old Western movies.
Like an old 6-shooter.
Yeah, exactly. Which is also pretty cool. It used standard handgun bullets, it had a faster rate of fire, and it was more powerful than the standard handgun. It was capable of dropping zombies in 4 shots, 4 or 5, and it could also knock a licker out of midair. So if a licker was trying to jump at you, you could just aim upwards, and shooting with that gun would knock it straight out the sky.
Sweet.
Its downside was it only had a low round capacity, such as 6 rounds, just as you said, 6-shooter. Still, this was a real upgrade for the pistol, and it made the gun actually useful against more than just zombies and dogs. Other unlockables include special weapons, such as an infinite ammo rocket launcher, and that can be unlocked by completing the first scenario in under 2 hours and 30 minutes with an A or B rank. Yeah. Unlike the previous game, though, there are 2 more weapons to unlock. These being an unlimited ammo submachine gun. To unlock that, you needed to complete Scenario B in under 3 hours with an A or B rank, and perhaps the most difficult gun to unlock, To unlock this, you need to complete Scenario B in under 3 hours with an A or B rank, and perhaps the most difficult to unlock is a gun which does not even appear in the game otherwise. This is the Gatling gun. The Terminator 2 style weapon is unlocked by completing Scenario B in under 2.5 hours with an A or B rank, but without saving. So you have to complete this in a single run. Yeah, that's tough.
That is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So not only do you have to do it fast, but you have to do it in a way that gets you an A or B rank, and you can't save. Now, I honestly can't remember if I ever did this, but I feel like I have because I remember using the gun. And I don't know if I used it at someone else's house who had unlocked it, or I actually did it, but I remember using the gun. And I actually remember thinking it wasn't as fun as I wanted it to be.
No.
Because you could unlock the submachine gun, and it was very much the same. It had a bit of a scatter to it, and because when you used it, your sort of arm was you holding the gun would be circular, but I don't know. I really don't remember doing it because I don't even really remember playing the B scenario that often. But I know I used it. But anyway, there were a couple of more unlockables, but these gave you new game modes to play. The first of which was named Fourth Survivor. Now, this refers to, at the time, the fourth known survivor of Raccoon City, which was Hunk, the code name given to an Umbrella Security Service operative and the leader of Alpha Team, who manages to survive an encounter with the mutated William Birkin in the sewers, where his team is decimated. Hunk manages to survive, and this play mode tells the story, somewhat, of his escape from the sewers to his extraction helicopter on the RPD roof. A series of episodes are planned where we will cover the deep lore of Resident Evil, including specific events, timelines, and characters, so we will eventually discuss Hunk and this game mode from a lore perspective in further detail somewhere down the line on typewriter sessions. But in the meantime, this game mode has a timer, but its main purpose is to measure your performance, and it goes towards your grade, which you'll earn of the playthrough. There doesn't appear to be any kind of special reward for getting a high rank, as far as my research went anyway, so there's no, other than bragging rights, I don't think.
There's no extra unlockables if you're...
No, if you complete it in 3 minutes, you get the ultimate god mode, where you fly through walls or something. There's just nothing like that. I think it is literally bragging rights.
Yeah.
Hunk is kitted out with a handgun, magnum, shotgun, and ammunition for all of these. The handgun you get has a nice healthy 150 rounds, 15 shotgun shells, and 8 magnum bullets. You're also given 2 lots of mixed blue and green herbs. His special item instead of a lighter or lockpick is the G-Virus, which is of course Hunk's mission, and to retrieve that and return it to Umbrella. As mentioned, you need to head from the sewers to the helipad of the roof of the RPD station. So this means heading out of the sewers, into the police dog area, through the car park, into the station, through the corridors of the first floor, back through the upper main hall, back onto the helipad outside, which is where the helicopter crashes in the main game. And then as you get there, you walk through the door, a cutscene takes place where Hunk's signaling a helicopter with a flare, and that ends the scenario. And then you just see the helicopter fly away into the distance. Along the way, Hunk will encounter zombies, dogs, crows, lickers, RV plants, and in the final corridor, Mr. X. To unlock this mode, you had to complete both scenarios and get an A rank on at least one of those scenarios playthroughs. There was an additional scenario after this, which is just weird. And you probably know what I'm talking about.
Exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly. So, if you complete any scenario 6 times and get an A rank on at least one of those playthroughs, you'd unlock a game mode called Tofu Survivor. So this game mode is basically the same as the fourth Survivor, apart from Hunk has been replaced by a white block, which kind of floats, but looks like it's running, even though it has no feet. It makes a weird squeak kind of sound when it moves, and it has a couple of hands. You only get a knife, 2 green herbs, and 1 blue, meaning it's really fucking hard. The trade-off, though, is that Tofu is fast when running, and is also able to absorb a large amount of damage. Tofu also changes colour depending on how much damage they take, so he'll turn red when he's in danger, or even purple when poisoned. Being poisoned and in danger is the only time when Tofu will limp, otherwise there is no penalty to his speed. It's just so fucking weird, right? So I'm sure anyone who doesn't know this is wondering why the whole white block thing and why tofu. Well, I don't really know the answer to that as such, but the white block is actually a player character hit block, which developers use before turning it into a character model. So that's what that is. So that's basically just to sort of like when they're creating the game, it's like the hit block. Where will the limits of the character reach, and how will it come into obstacles and obstructions and things like that. So, and I guess they sort of thought, well, the white block looks like a lump of tofu.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the best I can come up with, and it seems the most logical. But anyway, the idea of this playthrough is essentially just to run and dodge every enemy and not engage in any kind of combat. If you watch playthroughs of it on YouTube, some people have obviously played this mode so much they just know where to expect enemies and also anticipate how they'll behave and how to get around these areas without taking a swipe of the knife and never even taking a single bit of damage. Honestly, I've watched through. I watched one by YouTube user Turkish Bullet 19, and honestly, it was nothing short of magical. Right, the guy was a wizard. He doesn't take any damage. He dodges everything perfectly, and he obviously gets an S rank. Go check it out. Although I'm sure there are countless other people who have done it, but I just watched that one specifically, and it blew my mad. So, funny end note on this though is when you complete both of these modes, you're given your completion summary, and you're presented with an image of Hunk sat in the helicopter, looking out the side of the open doorway of the helicopter, and as he's looking out, you can see like another helicopter in the background, but he's holding onto his signature red lensed gas mask. But when you complete the Tofu Survivor, this image has been tweaked ever so slightly, and instead of the gas mask, he's holding on to some chopsticks, and there's like a bowl of tofu there, and at the bottom of the screen you can actually sort of like see the tofu character like laid on the floor with a chunk out of him. So Hunk is there just tucking into tofu, this player you've been playing as. So
your reward is to be eaten
by another character. Awesome. So and also I'll just quickly point out that the start screen of the Tofu Survivor is kind of funny because it has two characters looking like the tofu block, and one of them is wearing Jill's beret with a holster on, and the other is obviously meant to represent Leon because it's got some bandages wrapped around it, just like Leon does after he's taken the shot for Ada. So yeah, really weird. So, as I'm sure it will come no surprise to anybody listening and anybody else who knows all about Resident Evil, the game was obviously a critical success. It was made on a production cost of $1 million in 1998 money, and it had a $5 million advertising and promotion budget.
That's crazy.
5
times the actual game's budget.
Yes.
On marketing.
Insane, and certainly an insane amount of money in today's money. And when you put that into context, I think it roughly translates to around 11 million. In today's money. So that's and today being 2025 for anyone listening in another year. So when you think this is at a time when video games as an entertainment medium wasn't really taken as seriously as what it is today. I mean, you see adverts for video games on buses and everything now, and it is like seen as an actual acceptable form of entertainment now, and storytelling, etc. So when you sort of think about like the amount of money that was put into it, even then, crazy, absolutely crazy. And I think it just sort of showed like how successful this game would be with players, and how much faith Capcom had in the brand even at this point. But while we're discussing money, let's talk numbers. In 1998, Resident Evil 2 had beaten all but one Hollywood-produced movie for an opening weekend sales and revenue, and it beat Final Fantasy VII and Super Mario 64 for the same accolade, and it smashing their record. So, on its release weekend, the game had managed to sell more than 380,000 units to the sum of $19 million, which is around $38 million today.
My gosh.
Yeah. Around a month and a half after its release, the game had achieved sales of around 3 million copies, with 1.9 million sold in Japan and just over a million sold in the US. So remember, UK and EU didn't see this game until May. So worldwide sales figures were simply comprised of Japan and US at this point. So by the time production and distribution of the game's initial release had ended, Resident Evil 2 had sold just short of 5 million copies, and it is still the series' best-selling game on a single platform. To put this into perspective, when counting all versions of Resident Evil 1 and 2, by March 1999, it was counted that roughly 11 million units had been sold. So when you take into account there are a number of ports for Resident Evil 2, which would still go on to be released after this, which we'll come to shortly, that's a lot of units sold, and a lot of which are made up by Resident Evil 2.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's 5 million, but so just less than half of the entire series at that point which had been sold, and this is only including Resident Evil 2 released on the PlayStation 1. Just short of half of those are in Resident Evil 2.
Yeah.
Bonkers. In terms of the critical reception, the game was highly praised, as was the case with Resident Evil 1996. The vast majority of gaming publications, which are now out of print, but for those that are still functioning either as an online entity or are still fighting the good fight as a printed magazine, they gave the following scores. British Video Game Magazine, Computer and Video Games, gave the game 5 out of 5, where the website edition of the publication gave it a 9 out of 10. It's kind of weird that they had two different reviewers for it, treating publication and website as two separate entities, but I suppose this was the early days of the internet, and they were probably still filling it out whether or not the internet would really take off. It's just a fucking weird way to think about it. Reviewers for the print edition of Computers and Video Games generally praised all factors of the games, such as puzzles, the horror elements, graphics, and the use of audio, as well as the replayability of the game due to the number of scenarios available. Paul Mallinson of the website edition of CVG, although he praised the story and cinematic presentation, found the story to be far-fetched, but was thankfully kept grounded by, quote, clever scripting and gritty storytelling. Far-fetched, right? I mean, did you know he's playing a Resident Evil game, for fuck's sake? Zombies, monsters, it's not quite a documentary, is it?
I wouldn't, yeah. At what point during his playthrough was he like, do you know what, I don't really buy this.
Yeah.
I do not.
This is ridiculous. Come on. What do you mean that the police chief's a rapist? Don't be ridiculous.
That's the most believable part of the whole game.
Sadly. But yeah, I don't know what this guy wanted. Anyway. Japanese video game publication Famitsu gave the game 37 out of 40, which is just another really weird, strange scoring system. IGN gave it 9.3 out of 10, and reviewer Ricardo Sanchez praised the atmosphere and went on to say, quote, the graphics, sound effects, music, and level design all work together to create a spooky, horror-filled world, end quote. Gaming website GameSpot shared this sentiment, with reviewer Ryan McDonald stating the game to be, quote, like a product out of Hollywood, end quote, and added it was, quote, more an interactive cinematic experience than a video game, end quote. That's a fair point, that. He also praised the zapping system and called it cool in concept, but it was underused. I don't know about that. I think it was kind of used.
I think for a proof of concept, like first crack at it, I think it was quite. They did enough.
I think so. I think it was subtle enough. I think if they kept plugging away at it, it would have just been weird. I think it's done to the right amount. Because
during your playthrough, you still need to feel like what you're doing in the moment matters.
Yeah.
Not everything should be I need to consider how this will affect something else later on down the line. It's like you need to feel like you're in the moment gameplay. Yeah, like your agency is important for yourself and what's happening now.
I agree, and I also feel like if if there was more of the zapping system in place, it would remove that element of feeling like I can just pick up, do one playthrough of it, and then that's the end of it.
Yeah.
If there was more of it, like you just said there, where you had to constantly think about your actions for the next person, it wouldn't just feel as easy just to think, oh well, I just want to play. When I've completed it as Leon, I don't think I'll play it again for a while.
Yeah, and also you'd spend the entire game just second guessing every decision you made.
Yeah, you'd be
should
like,
I pick this up?
Yeah.
Should I pick this gun up? Should I pick this health item up?
Mm.
Do I need to open this door now? Like, you know, it still needs to be enjoyable and satisfying as a standalone experience for the people that don't bother with the B scenario or
exactly. I think it needs to be able to feel like it's still its own game without that there's two parts to it. So anyway, what does he know? He only writes reviews. GameSpot US gave it 8.9 out of 10, while us Brits were a little more favourable, and GameSpot UK gave it a 9.2 out of 10. To summarise its critical reception, the original release of the game has an average score of 93% on Game Rankings, based on 25 official review outlets and publications which, yet again, sadly, the vast majority no longer exist. For that matter, Game Rankings no longer exists either, as in 2019 it was merged with Metacritic, where it currently holds a score of 89 out of 100 for both the PlayStation and N64 port of the game. Overall, the game was praised highly for a number of different reasons, but that being said, there's always something someone has to say to pick fault, no matter how picky that has to be. So, even a game as well crafted as this, some reviewers picked fault at the inventory system, calling it a pain and difficult to use. Some disliked the item box and criticised the boxes being magically linked, calling it unrealistic. I mean, I guess if they weren't linked, it would have made the whole overrun by zombies city and the underground lab full of monsters just so much more realistic, wouldn't it? Yeah.
I mean, you take that unrealistic aspect to it and you get Resident Evil 0, which just annoyed the hell out of people for a completely different reason.
Exactly, and we'll come to that eventually. I mean, I'm going to be playing that for my channel soon, and I'm not looking forward to it. But it's I just think, like, unrealistic. What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
It's one of my absolute favourite things in the world. People nitpicking tiny details in clearly entirely fictional worlds,
exactly,
because they don't adhere to real world. I saw this is a little aside. I had to I had to argue with someone online yesterday. I saw them complaining about the fact that in Star Wars they'd noticed how when a ship gets blown up in a space fight and then the ship starts falling, it's like, are we supposed to believe that physics just don't exist here? It's like, that's exactly what you're supposed to believe. It's Star Wars. It's not hard sci-fi. It's a space fantasy film. There's
and also
magic wizards and little,
Again, if you're going to start talking about physics and all the rest of it, can I just remind you that there's no sound in space, but you can hear all the fucking lasers going on and the explosion? Shut the fuck up, you clown. Oh my God, I hate people. So anyway, saving method was also criticised yet again, especially with the PC audience who didn't appreciate the inability of being able to save whenever they liked. But I think people, again, I talked about this in the Resident Evil 1996 episodes. That is the point.
Yeah, that is what makes this survival horror.
Yeah.
These are the painstaking annoyances that turn it into that tense. Part of the gameplay is baked into that. I can't carry everything I need, so I need to be selective about what I pick up, and I need to, especially if you're hunting, the high tier rankings as well. You need to think about, do I need to save?
And thinking about the number of saves that you've got as well, because you only get so many increments.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, although they are, quite, they're quite common, but that you've also got that to consider as well. It's like, well, how often can I save? And when should I save? What am I coming up against next? Like you just said there, that's the whole point of survival horror, isn't it? It's what am I going to come across? Have I got the right items? Should I save now? What if I don't save now and I come across a boss and I get fucking killed and I've got to go all the way back to wherever I was last?
I might have just lost like an hour or like 2 hours worth
Yeah.
of gameplay.
I just don't understand. I don't understand these people. I really don't. It's also funny though that the next criticism comes off the back of the previous game, which it is somewhat infamous for, which of course is the voice acting. So incredibly, reviewers for GamePro and even CVG called the voice acting to be terrible and cheesy. Well, I'm sorry, but in my personal opinion, I think it's leaps and bounds above its predecessor.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe by today's standards, it might not be great, but I actually think I've heard some voice acting in games today which are worse than what I've heard in Resident Evil 2. I just, honestly, I just don't know what the fuck is wrong with people. For its time as well, 1998.
And again, tonally consistent with the kind of vibe that the game and the series as a whole are shooting for.
Exactly. And again, when you compare it to what we had previously, like, anyway, so there are a number of hidden Easter eggs in Resident Evil 2, and these come in a few different forms, ranging from cool to downright weird and creepy. The first is a reference to The Shining. We discussed in the original Resident Evil episodes that the typewriters were a reference to the movie. We also mentioned how the Overlook Hotel from The Shining influenced many of the rooms in the mansion, but in Resident Evil 2, the nod to The Shining goes one step further. In one area of the corridors of the ground floor to the RPD, this is near where the interrogation rooms are, there's some boards on the wall, like over the windows and everything. Now, when you sort of like get a certain angle as you come into that corridor, if you look at the board, I think it's to the left of the camera angle, you can actually see the word Red Rum.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Which is
cool.
obviously the infamous word written by Danny in The Shining. On the streets of Raccoon City, there's a very interesting looking car, and to many it will be very, very familiar. In the area on the way to the RPD, when you reach the bus, there is a Mini parked up on the side of the road, which is a green hoodie with a black hood. And this is, of course, a reference to Mr. Bean. Which is a bit of a weird one, but there's no doubt when you see it, it is unrecognisably Mr. Bean's Mini.
Oh.
Yeah, you could go check it out.
Oh, you see, now I'm just sad they didn't go the step further and have just a zombified Mr. Bean roaming the streets of Raccoon City.
With his teddy hanging out of his pocket. That'd be fucking badass. Yeah, he has his own unique zombie sounds. Another famous film reference within the game is a reference to Back to the Future. Now, Hideki Kamiya has stated the inspiration for the zapping system was born from his love of the films, and he tried to get this system in the first game, as we previously mentioned, but the reference to this film became a little more obvious when in one of the opening camera angles on the streets of Raccoon City, you can clearly see the DeLorean just sitting there parked up at the side of the road. It's so obvious as well. It's like not even remotely hidden. There's just the DeLorean sat there. So it's not the first time it pops up either. There is another crazy reference to the film which can be found in the star's office. On a corkboard on the wall next to Rebecca's desk, you can see a calendar with a pixelated image on it. This is actually a pixelated cast image from Back to the Future 3, and it has Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd, and Mary Steenburgen. Yeah, fucking weird. Absolutely wild. Seeing as we're in the star's office, let's cover some of the Easter eggs and references to the previous game. The Star's office is undoubtedly a place for Resi fans just to utterly nerd out. I remember finding it and I absolutely loved it. And I remember just like poring over the desk being like, oh, this is so-and-so's desk. And I was just kind of nerding out over the personalities being revealed just by simply looking and clicking on their desks. One of the main discoveries in here, which serves a number of purposes, is obviously Chris's diary, which is one nerd out thing. But obviously, we also sort of learn about what happened after the mansion incident, which is, an Easter egg, kind of. It also alluded to the upcoming Resident Evil game, Code Veronica, which we didn't know about that at that point.
No.
Not for another few years, but that was already setting setting little scenes up and planting little seeds. Other references to the previous game was Chris's Made in Heaven leather jacket hung up on the wall. So I guess we're just meant to believe that jacket just was incinerated when it got bombed, when the city got bombed. So unlucky Chris, you don't have your jacket anymore. Jill's infamous beret sits on her desk. A desk for Rebecca shows her medical pack hung up on the wall. And another desk shows a dismantled gun on the desk, which of course belongs to Barry. Now there is another desk in the office which belonged to Wesker. The desk is in disarray, most likely as a result of the STARS members looking for evidence on Wesker, or it could have actually been even Ada or somebody else looking to bury any of that evidence and cover it up. Either way, a very strange and creepy Easter egg can be found at Wesker's desk. If you click on Wesker's desk 50 times, you get a piece of film. Take that piece of film to the developing room in the safe room, and you develop it, and it gives you a picture of Rebecca Chambers in a rather risque basketball uniform. It's very, very creepy. And although I thought Wesker was already a bit of a weirdo, I think it just puts a whole new spin on it. It's just, I don't get it. But yeah, she's in like a, the whole short skirt thing, and it's a little bit weird. Yeah, don't get it. So, the final Easter egg can be found on the wall behind Wesker's desk. This is a photo of the entire STARS team, both Alpha and Bravo together. And I used to enjoy trying to name all the members lined up together. And real quick, in a box next to Chris's desk, there's also the golden wooden emblems that you swap over.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's almost like, we'll take them with us. Although I don't know when they did that, because I don't remember going back in the game to pick them up. But yeah, those emblems must have somehow survived the explosion and they brought them back. But in the box, yeah, you can see it it's hard in the sort of versions that we get, but people have been able to sort of like tidy those scenes up.
Yeah.
And you can see the two emblems sort of like sitting together in a box, which is kind of cool. There's a couple of other Easter eggs dotted about the game, which are reference to real-world events at the time as well. These include a pixelated poster of Kobe Bryant with the Los Angeles Lakers on a poster, and this is found in the briefing room of the RPD, and a pixelated poster of a Playboy cover can be found on the wall of the guardhouse, which is the bunk and locker room in the corridor where the shutters are. Now, not Easter eggs, but certainly something we need to discuss are the spelling mistakes in the game. Some really weird ones. So there's an infamous elevator spelling at the end of the game. This is because the elevator at the end of the game in scenario A shows the elevator. It's spelt on the floor, but it's spelt with an ER at the end. So it's spelled ELEVATER instead of elevator instead of elevator. Another, which is in a file regarding the G virus, which says, do its unusually accelerated cell division instead of due to its unusually accelerated cell division. So it's like do instead of due. Yeah, I don't know how that got missed. Perhaps one of the most famous ones, though, is in the room where you find Marvin Branner, which is the injured cop. In this room, the RPD officers are going to throw a welcome party for Leon, and a sign on the desk reads, "Welcome, Leon." However, welcome is spelt with two L's. So it's a fairly famous one. But this does come up again in the remake where they sort of address that. And it's a really cool little thing that they've done. I was going to mention, I'll just mention it now, but although it's spelt right, if you look at the desk, there's another L just sort of like...
Yeah, because it's a banner hanging from the ceiling in the remake, isn't it? And
and it's got like individual letters
in the middle where the extra L has fallen on.
Yeah. So although it's spelt right, the gap in between the letters is just a little bit bigger than the others, and you can see the L sat on the desk. I thought that was really, really cool. And the last one, although not really a spelling mistake, this is really weird. It's on the screen for the elevator at the end of scenario B. It is the most bizarre thing, and it makes no sense at all. But on the screen, which controls the elevator, you sort of see all this numbers and lights and everything else. But there's some writing on there, some text, and it says 3 men gorilla stance. I have absolutely no idea what it means, and I've even actually tried to understand what it means. I've typed it into Google to see what it means, and the only thing that it ever comes up with is something mildly related to wrestling, because
Right.
the part behind the curtain, and I do watch wrestling, so the part behind the curtain before they come out, that's called gorilla.
Right.
But there is no connection between Three Men Gorilla Stance and Resident Evil and wrestling. I actually don't know what it means. But anyway, if anyone knows what it means, get in touch with us, because I ain't got a fucking clue.
Be a good name for a band.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to start a Resident Evil 2 theme.
Three Men Gorilla Stance, yeah! Yeah, it would be pretty good, actually. So, unused material. Now, we've spoken about some of the cool additions to the game, but what about things that were cut? Well, a cutscene of STARS members arguing and confronting Chief Irons regarding the Arclay Mountains and the Spencer Mansion incident, that was cut from the game. It wasn't a cutscene as such, it was sort of like put into the intro with the voiceover and the still images, and there was going to be one where it's like, you know, it's being drawn or painted up or whatever, and you can see Chris, Jill, Barry, Rebecca and Brad stood in front of Irons' desk, and they're sort of like shouting at him, and he's just sat there turned in his chair, not really giving a flying fuck. Which you can still find it, and it's pretty cool. It's quite a cool looking image, but they cut it out undoubtedly to make it so that you learn that stuff through the game rather than just in the intro. Items cut from the game include ammo for the spark shot, which I can only think the reason for this was because it was such a powerful weapon, it made you pick when to use it rather than just firing away willy-nilly. Also, I say it was a powerful weapon, it was only really good for the boss fights.
Yeah.
So when else would you really need it? The other ammo cut from the game was the flamethrower, as I've already said. Again, presumably Capcom must become concerned with players eventually becoming paramaniacs or arsonists or something, and they don't want people to use flamethrowers too often. We've already discussed the amount of weapons cut from the game in 1.5, but there were still some guns. Well, it's just a single gun actually. This was cut from Resident Evil 2, and that was the Calico M950 pistol. It does actually appear in Code Veronica, but we'll discuss that another time. I actually remember seeing the images for this game, for this gun in a gaming magazine, and I was confused that I was never able to find it or unlock it. It's quite a strange looking gun. It's got like a real sort of like long, like, in fact, I'll just see if I can find an image of it instead, and I'll show you what I mean. But in the meantime, while my laptop's decided to go to sleep. It was quite a distinct looking gun, and if you've seen an image of it, you'll know exactly what I mean. Presumably it was cut either due to the number of unlockable guns already present, or it was just removed in place of another gun. I'm not entirely sure. A chemical mixing ability to craft ammunition, which ends up appearing in Resident Evil 3, that was cut. We'll discuss how this works in more detail in the next episode when it's relevant to Resident Evil 3. But in Resident Evil 2, it was designed to create grenade launcher rounds, and the two chemicals cut from the game were ACW24 and FRW09. I don't have the specifics on how these would have worked, but presumably they would have worked in the same way as it does in Resident Evil 3, and you combine the chemicals in different ways and it gives you different results. Let me just see if I can find this Calico pistol Resident Evil 2. There's a picture, quite a thingy picture of Leon using it. Of course I can't find it. I remember seeing it in the... Either way, it looks like that.
Okay.
It's a weird looking thing.
Yeah. It looks a bit more sort of sci-fi than...
Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird thing. I mean, in Code Veronica, it looks like that. So it's kind of similar, but it's got like a long back on it. But in the... Oh, there's a picture of Leon using it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I remember seeing a picture like that in a gaming magazine. I mean, Ada's got it there. And I remember seeing it like, oh, well, that looks like a weird gun. I wonder what that is. And then never found it. You know, playing the game and unlocking everything, I was just like, Still never come across that fucking gun. What the hell was it? So anyway, something which was cut from the game at the very last minute was a scene involving your first encounter with the liquor. So as you round the corner in the liquor corridor, there's a police officer on the ground with no head. As you walk down the corridor, suddenly the player's character attention is drawn to the ceiling, and a cutscene begins of the liquor walking along the ceiling. It's fairly infamous. Originally, the reason the character's attention is drawn to look upwards is because a head drops from the ceiling. So as you start approaching, this head drops to the ground, and then Leon or Claire would look upwards, and then that's when the cutscene would start. But this was cut by censorship. But because it was so late into the game, they actually couldn't remove the head from the game.
Okay.
And it's still there in its code. And all they did was just stop that animation from happening.
Oh, right.
So the animation just doesn't trigger now. But the head is still there. And if it's quite hard. I mean, if you kill that liquor and you've got the time to do it, you can actually walk into the next scene, the next camera angle, and in the very, very corner, you can just see the edge of the head still there, waiting to fall. And of course, it never does. But some people who have managed to go, like some coders and people who have like the PC version of the game, and they've managed to go in and tweak it, they've moved the camera angle along, and you can actually see the full head with its face and everything. It is there.
Lovely.
But yeah, sadly, it will never fall. Now, although not a cut or unused element of the game, but something worth mentioning, as it is somewhat infamous in the world of Resident Evil, this was the lack of bathrooms in the RPD. Although you won't find a bathroom anywhere, it makes sense. You would have found some in the RPD. You should have.
Yeah.
It's a functioning police station. But this just isn't the case. This is something that many fans have brought up over the years, and it was eventually quashed when the game was remade in 2019, and they finally put bathrooms in the station, and the numerous police officers and staff could finally go and curl one out and lay a cable.
They could indeed.
Yeah, so good for them. So in the Resident Evil 1996 episodes, we talked about how the game was re-released not once but twice with a director's cut. Well, Resident Evil 2 didn't necessarily escape this either when they re-released the game with a DualShock version in August 1998 in Japan and November 1998 in the US. Here in the UK and the rest of Europe, we didn't get this, and as a result, we never got to experience some of the cool features which were added to this version of the game. And there was, like, I recently found out that there were actually features in the PC version, and I played the PC versions for my playthroughs on YouTube.
Yeah.
And all of those features which were in the DualShock version were actually included on those. And had I known, I'd have been able to play a game mode which I never got to play. So, other than support for the analog controls of the DualShock controller, which was becoming the standard for the PlayStation at that time, the game itself had no real differences to other than a new game mode. The game was exactly the same otherwise, but they added something called the Extreme Battle Mode. This was akin to the battle mode found in the Saturn port of the previous Resident Evil, in that players must navigate a chosen character from one area of the game to another. Players must travel from the underground lab monitor room, so this is like the save room with the 8 million monitors screens all over it, and they must get to the RPD station. When you reach the station, you have to locate 4 antivirus bombs which are planted on the escape, and these are planted on the escape train at the end of the game. The location of the bombs is random in each playthrough, so this is something the player should bear in mind when playing through. You know, you don't get to remember where the bombs are and go straight there. The player will find ammo, health, and even ink ribbons to save your progress along the way. The mode makes you feel as if you should rush and you're timed, but this actually isn't the case. Players will come across a variety of enemies, including Mr. X and even William Birkin in his dog mode form. So, yeah, you'll also come across the usual standard enemies, dogs, blah, blah, blah. The The mode had 3 stages of difficulty, which were oddly named level 1, 2, and 3. I mean, wouldn't it just been easier to call it easy, medium, and hard?
Yeah.
But
As is the convention of every game
ever. Yeah, exactly. So each level altered the parameters of the game. So level 1, the player begins with 5 ink ribbons, plenty of ammo everywhere. You can find it, and it's not hard to find. Damage inflicted by enemies is somewhat minimal, and the antivirus bombs are almost generally always in the same location in each playthrough. Level 2, players begin with 3 ink ribbons. Ammo's not quite as easily found, and the location of the bombs are now randomized. Level 3 makes this game mode an absolute ball bag. It means you take loads of damage, there's barely any ammo, you get 1 fucking ink ribbon, and Birkin's dog mutation now turns up in certain locations, and the bombs are never in the same area, and always completely random. So if you want to punch yourself in the dick or the vagina, that's a really great game mode to play. Playable characters were Leon, Claire, Ada, and Chris Redfield.
Oh,
yeah. So he gets a unique upgrade in his appearance in this version of the game. He's wearing his signature green vest. This has the Made in Heaven angel on the back of it, though. This is probably the closest he'll look to the concept art of the first game we see in the instruction manual. Each feature perfectly replicated in the sense that he's got the right sort of build, got the vest on, and in that sort of higher polygon count style. He looks great, to be fair. He was also given a pistol unique to him, a silver Beretta, which I presume was the sort of prototype look for what would become the Star's custom handgun, which has become to be known as the Samurai Edge, but we'll talk about that in our next episode. So he also came with a customized shotgun, which Leon gets in his playthrough, but unlike Leon, Chris isn't kicked back when he fires it, and that's probably because he's so fucking hench and he's used to punching boulders and stuff like that.
He's a big meaty boy.
He is. But yeah, he don't get the kickback of it. He just don't give a shit. Each character came with their own inventory, which I won't list here, but it's become quite common in other versions of battle modes and things like that they get their own set of weapons and things like that. One other feature was of the DualShock mode, though, was the addition of a rookie mode, which made the game even easier. The player would start with a more powerful gun, and it had infinite ammo. So, babies. In the Japanese version of the DualShock release, there was an option to play a game mode named as USA version. This was the version of the game released in the US, UK, and Europe, as these versions of the games were actually made more difficult. The reason Capcom chose to make the game more difficult in these territories was to prevent the rental of the game from stores which provided game rentals. By making the game more difficult, the intention was to prevent people playing the game and completing it in such a short period of time they'd be able to return it and get it done within that sort of short, higher time that you get. I guess it made people more inclined to need to buy it than just rent it, smash it, and destroy it and take it back.
Or at the very least, have to rent it again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, get multiple rents out of it, yeah. Ultimately, the DualShock version of the game became the main version of the game used for future port releases, which, of course, Resident Evil 2 did have. Now, of course, we'll come to the ports. So, we discussed in the previous episodes how Resident Evil had been synonymous as being like a PlayStation game, but, I guess it is because it kind of put the PlayStation on the map and vice versa. But as always, Resident Evil 2, just like Resident Evil, it was not solely a PlayStation game, and it did have ports. So in February 1999, just a little longer than a year after the PlayStation version, a Windows PC version was released. This version was a port of the DualShock version, so it maintained all the functionality and extras which came with this version. It did have an added feature, however, with the option of a data gallery. The data gallery contained cutscene videos to choose from, so you could just watch them anytime you like. It had concept art, early development sketches, and 3D models of the characters that you could just pore over, which I thought was quite a cool addition. This version of the game obviously presented the game in a higher resolution, making the aesthetics sharper and clearer, and had skippable cutscenes and door transitions. I'd like to quickly say, though, that this was the first time we got a game before everybody else, because us here in the UK got the game a whole day before the Japanese. So the UK PC release was released February 18th, 1999, where the Japanese release was February 19th. So suck it.
Yeah.
Unlucky US guys, because you guys didn't see it until March the 4th. So not a massive amount of time had passed, but you still had to wait a couple of weeks. A Japanese exclusive of the PC game was released and developed by Source Next. This version of the PC game was released in 2006 to be compatible with Windows XP and was given a bit of a glow up in that they upscaled all of the FMV cutscenes to a higher resolution, making them a lot more pleasant to the eye, which, to be fair, I wouldn't have minded in my PC version of the game because the FMVs looked worse than the actual gameplay itself. This version of the game was released on DVD rather than CD. Now, the next port, which was the N64. This was the first Resident Evil game to be released on a Nintendo console, as the Game Boy Color game Resident Evil Gaiden wouldn't be released until 2001. Resident Evil 2 was released in the US in November 1999, Japan in January 2000, and finally UK and Europe in February 2000. Of the ports, the N64 was particularly praised for its ability to port the game so faithfully, while the console being technically inferior to others of its generation. The whole situation reminds me a little bit of the Sega Saturn port of the original, in that it manages to be just as aesthetically amazing despite its technical limitations. To put things in perspective, Resident Evil 2 was presented on the PlayStation on two 700 megabyte discs, where the N64 was able to be ported to a 64 megabyte cartridge. A single cartridge.
Astounding.
It's insane. So it is also one of the very few games of its console to feature FMVs, so full motion videos, as it was generally something the console struggled to produce. The game's port was handled by Angel Studios, who worked alongside 10 Capcom employees to replicate the game's assets. Sound and video were compressed and reapplied to run in a way which would relieve the burden on storage and instead rely on the console's high processing power instead. Despite the console's technical limitations and relative inferiority to the PlayStation, if the player's console had the expansion pack installed, the N64 version of the game had the ability to actually look better than the PlayStation version. For those unaware as to what that is, the expansion pack was almost like a cartridge which slotted into the front of the console, and it expanded the console's onboard RAM from 4 megabytes to 8 megabytes. Did you ever see that? It's like I got it with my copy of Majora's Mask, Zelda Majora's Mask. It sort of like came bundled with it. You couldn't play it without it. As a result, the game was able to run at a higher resolution and provided smoother graphical textures. It also resulted in faster loading times, which were significantly faster than that of the disc versions of the game, which is just bonkers. The fact that it was actually, presentation-wise, it actually was better than the PlayStation, despite it being on a single cartridge. Fucking crazy. Unlike some of the other games on the console, save data could actually be recorded directly to the game cartridge itself, removing the need for the memory pack, which would have been plugged into the controller. The N64 was just weird. With this in mind, this meant the player could have the rumble pack installed to the controller and make use of the vibration support. The N64 port cost $1 million and took roughly 12 months to develop. Not only was this an excellent and faithful recreation of the game did come with some additional features which were exclusive to this version of the game. Exclusive features included the ability to change the colour of the blood from the enemies, the options being green and blue, and obviously red. I think green would have been pretty cool because it's like infected blood.
Slimy, toxic,
Yeah, but blue, I don't know what that's all about. It's a bit shit. You could also alter the level of gore in general, such as the level of blood. Other differences included an item randomizer, which would move the location of key items, which would make the game a little tougher. Exclusive unlockable costumes for both Leon and Claire were available, just as they were in the original. Leon had access to 2 new costumes which replaced the costumes of the PlayStation version. The first was a new take on the leather jacket ensemble. This was a leather waistcoat over a white t-shirt. Leon wore this with baggy pants, leather boots and sunglasses with a bandana, which was ridiculously 90s. His other costume was more of a tactical outfit with a blue tactical Kevlar vest and the Stars logo on the back. This was worn with blue camo pants, boots and a blue cap with the Stars logo on it as well. So, interesting note though, Leon's side stance he had for his unlockable costumes in the PlayStation version only applied to the leather waistcoat version. He just had his regular stance when using his weapon when he was wearing the Stars tactical gear, which is a bit of a weird one. I don't know why that was. Claire again got a single replacement, but she also got the Colt SAA pistol again. The costume was a purple version of her Flame outfit from the PlayStation version, and on the back was an angel logo from the developer's studio, which is just a bit meh, really. It's kind of boring, and the only reason Claire has the edge over Leon again is because she gets that Colt pistol thing. Finally, the other exclusive content of this version is access to the X-Files, as in EX for extra. Yeah, not the David Duchovny type. The X-Files are made up of 16 additional notes and documents scattered throughout the game, which help bridge the gap between Resident Evil 2 and some of the upcoming releases in the Resident Evil franchise. This includes references to Dario in Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, a convict named Billy, which we would be introduced to in Resident Evil 0, and a mention of the Ashfords from Resident Evil Code Veronica, and many others. And just a very quick thing to point out as well is a cheeky little nod to the Hunters. The Hunters don't appear in Resident Evil 2, but if you enter the lab, which is opened by entering your fingerprints on the computer in scenario A and B, which we were talking about earlier, there'll be a dead Hunter in here slumped in the corner of the room. And we learn via a note close by that the Hunters have been scrapped for a new version of the Hunter, which we actually see when playing Resident Evil Outbreak, which is set during the events of Resident Evil 2. So it's likely that this Hunter that's in this room dead is the last of its kind. So, also, the password to gain entry to this room is usually guest. So you type in the password guest. In the other versions of the game, but in the N64 version, it's Nemesis. It's of course another nod to the upcoming sequel. I should also point out that while some ports use the DualShock version edition of the game as a port, the N64 port does not include the Extreme Battle Mode. And this is another one of those where, like the Resident Evil port on the Saturn, it really gets overlooked and disregarded to just how important a part it plays in the history of Resident Evil. Not just for how it, just for what it does for the franchise, but what it does for games development in general, simply because what they were able to achieve is really quite remarkable. The next port was the Dreamcast. Now, interestingly enough, Capcom had their eyes on developing a Resident Evil game for this console already, but obviously that's a conversation for another time. Resident Evil 2 on the Dreamcast had a very staggered release, and the jump between the different regions is really quite extraordinary. Japan saw the game released in December 1999, where the PAL territories, those being UK and Europe, were released on April 2000. Now, that's about 4 months or whatever, but the guys in the US didn't see a Dreamcast release until December 2000. So, like, a year
later.
I mean, I'm not accounting for the days or anything, but it was literally just shy of being a full year after the Japanese release. Capcom originally intended to release Resident Evil 2 on the Sega Saturn, and at a time it was in fact in development, well into development in fact. However, as was the case with the previous game, the console struggled to play the game, and where Resident Evil 1 they were able to tweak it and get it to work, they just couldn't do that with Resident Evil 2. Just because of the sheer improvements between 1 and 2 anyway. So the Saturn just couldn't handle it. With that, development shifted to Sega's follow-up console, that being the Dreamcast. The Dreamcast was a console I never owned, but it is definitely something of an overlooked gem, and it still has something of a fan following, with indie developers still developing games for the console today. The Dreamcast edition of Resident Evil 2 came with improvements and exclusive features, making use of its superior power and unique hardware. Graphical improvements seen in the PC version are present, as well as the game able to run at 60 frames per second during gameplay. And one cool feature was the character's health status being displayed on the controller if a video memory unit was installed. So they had this really weird memory card which had a screen on it. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. You plugged it into the controller and it had a screen. And yeah, it showed your health status without needing to bring up your inventory. It's kind of cool, but also kind of pointless. 2 new difficulties were added to the one was the item randomizer, which was, and I think it was. Oh yeah. So there was an item randomizer mode, which we've talked about, but there was also expert and nightmare modes, and these difficulties obviously need no explanation. The Japanese edition of the game had a subtitle to the game called Valve Plus and came bundled with a demo of Resident Evil Code Veronica. So it was Resident Evil 2 Valve Plus. And yeah, as I said, came with a demo of Code Veronica, and this game was already in development for this next generation console. So years later, in 2003, the DualShock edition of the game was also ported again to the Nintendo GameCube. There is an explanation as to why this game got a re-release on this console all those years later, but we'll talk about that another time. There's nothing of note that makes this version unique or special in any terms of the gameplay, and it's the fact that all those years later, to be ported to the GameCube, there was no improvements or unique features. It actually got panned by critics and players alike because they just didn't do anything with it. It was literally just
straight
port onto the disc. Yeah. Its only main improvement was that both versions of the game, that being Leon and Claire, went on 2 separate discs now. They were on 1. That was literally the only improvement they made. Otherwise, it is exactly the same. It was poor, really. In recent years, the DualShock edition of Resident Evil 2 has been re-released on GOG.com, which is Good Old Games, as it's called. And that's part of their work to restore, preserve, and give access to players a library of old classic games. This was released digitally on their website as part of a deal struck with Capcom. The game is available as part of a bundle where you can get the trilogy 1, 2, and 3, or you can just buy it on its own. The game's been updated with numerous quality of life enhancements for modern PCs and technology, and it boasts enhanced graphics and higher resolutions. And most recently, in August 2025, both Resident Evil 2 and 3 were released digitally on the PlayStation Store for both PlayStation 4 and 5. There's a weird one, which finally we'll touch on, which was the Game.com handheld version of the game. Now, it's not really a port. I'm throwing it in there just to be thorough, really, but Tiger Electronics developed their version of Resident Evil 2 on a 4 megabyte cartridge for their handheld gaming system, and it released at the tail end of 1998. The version is a 2.5D side-scrolling game. It uses black and white sprites, and it only follows Leon's path. It has no cutscenes and no music. Which this version of the game has the distinct honour, though, of being the first officially released Resident Evil game, which was portable. Which technically it is. It's somewhat offensive, I think, actually, because it's so fucking shit. But it is technically well, there's no technically about it. It's the first official Resident Evil game, which is handheld. So, quickly, a rundown of the review of the ports. I'm not going to give you a full rundown of all of the reviews and scores and sales performance of all of these ports, but I will give you their game rankings aggregator scores for each version. The PC version got 80%, N64 87%, Dreamcast 80%, and GameCube 63%. For one reason or another, the game was never generally as well received as the original, and I think the reason the N64 came as close as it did is simply because of the sheer ability to have produced and achieved what they did, and it's still deemed one of the greatest video game ports of all time.
Yeah.
I think when you compare the 87% score to how close it was to the PlayStation score of 93%, I think that generally says it all. And I think Angel Studios, if you're ever going to hear this and you was an employee or who worked on that project, congratulations to you all for your efforts.
Yeah, you worked miracles.
You did, doing God's work. So, release of, in other media and merchandise. So, in our Resident Evil 1996 episodes, we discussed the Resident Evil official comic magazine, which loosely adapted some of the game's events. Issue 1 and 2, titled Raccoon City R.I.P. And A New Chapter of Evil, respectively, were released in March and June of 1998. And a number of other comics have adapted the game with 60-issue run. Now, this is just 60-issue run of a Cantonese comic series running from February 1998 to April of the following year. So they actually did like a 60-issue run.
Oh, wow.
But it's only in Cantonese, which is
good.
really strange, but it's cool, whatever. Another adaptation was a really weird one. A 2-issue romantic comedy retelling. A rom-com. Which focused on Leon, Claire, and Ada. This was a Taiwanese publication, and I don't really know what else to say about that, to be honest. So, yeah, weird. I haven't read it, and I don't think I will. So, just as the previous game, S.D. Perry wrote and published a novelization of the events of Resident Evil 2, and tied in some of the unique and exclusive story elements written for the previous book, and carried that over into these to sort of create this continued narrative. The book was released in 1999 and was actually the third Resident Evil book written by Perry, as the book which came before it was an original story in the series. As mentioned before, we'll likely cover all of these books in a future episode, but you can enjoy them as an audiobook in the form of an audiobook on the Resident Evil YouTube channel. Oh, cool. So yeah, you go check that out. I'm actually going to try and listen to them because I never read the books and they're meant to be quite good. So I think I might listen to them as an audiobook. Again, we covered this as part of our Resident Evil 1996 episodes, but a line of action figures based on characters from Resident Evil were released in June 1998. Toy manufacturer Toy Biz purchased the license from Capcom in early 1997 to produce action figures to coincide with Resident Evil 2's release. The company made 3 series of action figures in the Resident Evil line. Series 2 and 3 focused on the second game and consisted of 7 releases. Series 2 consisted of Leon with a liquor, Claire with a zombie, William Birkin in his third and fourth transformation, the figure being able to transform between the two. Yeah, which was kind of cool. Series 3 was made up of Ada with an Ivy monster, Hunk with a zombie, Birkin in his second transformation with his eyeball arm. This came with a figure of Sherry Birkin as well. And Mr. X, who could also be turned into his tyrant form. So, as previously mentioned, these are very rare now, especially if you want these figures still in their original packaging. There was some controversy surrounding these figures. We mentioned in the Resident Evil episodes how there was a huge clampdown on violent cartoons, games, and other media, and toys also got their share of attention. The Claire with zombie figure garnered some attention due to the depiction of the zombie, which had its belly exposed, with some of its skin torn apart, and I think you could sort of see some of its innards and stuff like that, and that sort of came under fire because it was gory and it was toys, and the whole idea was that toys were for kids. But I think that perhaps the most troubling one was the idea that the Birkin and Sherry set endorsed incest rape. I think this may be down to the notion that Birkin was trying to impregnate Sherry with the G-virus embryos, but I think that might be taking the whole thing a little bit too far.
Yeah.
Because it's not like he was trying to
have
sex with her. Yeah, that's just, you're reading into it and you're being weird, so just stop. I as part of my research, although I wasn't able to sort of get the specifics, but I do believe that there was some sort of local governmental interference in the US trying to get this whole thing banned, and there was this big uproar, and local government was trying to get involved in one of the states or something. It was madness. So later releases, the Resident Evil 2 game, and specifically its Raccoon City apocalyptic setting, have been at the centre of fans' love for the series for decades. And with Resident Evil 1996 getting the remake treatment, fans and players wondered if 2 would ever get the same attention. With the GameCube remake of the original and the first Resident Evil being released in 2002, it looked like Resident Evil 2 wouldn't get a remake as the years continued to go by with no announcement and not as much as a sniff of any kind of consideration for the project to be greenlit. So, Resident Evil got its remake. Would 2 ever get one? It didn't really seem like that would be the case. But in 2015, Capcom finally announced the incredible news of a remake. And of course, this will be its own episode eventually, but that remake did get released in 2019, and we certainly got a remake worthy of the wait.
Mm-hmm.
Fan projects. Well, as you can expect with a game as revered as Resident Evil 2, a number of fan projects have been made over the years. Perhaps the most significant has been the work to rebuild and release a playable and accessible version of Resident Evil 1.5. Now, there are a few different versions of this, with indie developers putting their own spins on the completion of the game and how they feel it would have looked should it have been completed. But continuing to build upon a roughly half-finished version of the game, which was leaked and sold to a group of fans by a video game collector in 2011. They've worked hard to put it together and remake it, but another version was leaked online in 2013, and you would be pissed if you was one of those fans who had actually paid money for a version of 1.5, and then all of a sudden these leaked versions were just popping up. But yeah, some indie developers actually paid money for this stuff, as game developers and fans, and then all of a sudden, a couple of years later, it ended up online.
As these things do.
Yeah, you'd be pissed though. Restoring and completing Resident Evil 1.5 has been done using assets from Resident Evil 2 and 3, and have been working towards details released in many of the interviews with Mikami and Kamea and other Capcom development team members over the years. Although not perfect, in 2013, a playable version of this developed by Team iGas, one of the main development teams intent on restoring the game, are available, and Jared on his YouTube channel Avalanche Reviews has played this and reviewed it, and I'd go check it out, go check the video out and check his channel out, and he expresses how good it was to play a game which has kind of been like not forgotten about, but it's kind of like an urban legend. So it has that sort of status to it, really. Another project based on Resident Evil 1.5 is Resident Evil 1.5 Battle Coliseum. This has been such a convincing project that it has led some to believe that it was actually going to be an unlockable mode in Resident Evil 1.5. But obviously that was not the case at all. This is a fan project by a team of development called Loboto 3. They worked alongside Team iGas and developed what is a very unique game where the player takes control of Leon or Elza in a computer-generated virtual reality space and has to take on waves of enemies, which got progressively more difficult. It's also done from a third-person over-the-shoulder perspective, which eventually we got in Resident Evil 4. But it's played like that, and it's got that classic look of a virtual reality world, a bit like Tron, where it's got the green grid lines,
like the VR missions in Metal Gear.
In Metal Gear, exactly, and it's in a space like that, and the enemies sort of just materialize and then dematerialize. It's really weird. I don't know how someone came up with this idea. I really don't. It looks cool though, and it looks fun, and there's actually quite a lot of videos available out there of people playing it and trying to just absolutely hammer it and get really good high scores on it. I'd invite anyone to go watch them. They're quite fun to watch, actually. Outside of the Resident Evil 1.5 recreations, however, there is still a huge fan following of Resident Evil 2 fans, and you can expect, as such, there are a number of fan-made mods and games available. In our previous Resident Evil episodes, we covered a fan-made game made by Perra Autonomo, which turned the first game into a fully first-person perspective game. Now, it seems the developer never really fully finished that project, but has promised to continue it. but I would say it seems like his real efforts have been sunk into transforming Resident Evil 2 into a first-person game, and this is exactly what he's managed to do. Videos of this are very fun to watch, and it's great to look around areas of Raccoon City and the RPD station from perspectives you wouldn't otherwise have been able to see because of the because of the fixed camera perspectives. Also, in our previous episodes, we discussed a side-scrolling beat-em-up fan game named Resident Evil Survive, which that's still relative to this version. But another side-scrolling beat-em-up fan game, however, is Crisis Evil. Now, there is a trilogy of these games, but we're only going to discuss specifically Crisis Evil 2. And the reason for this is not only does it follow the events of Resident Evil 2, but it also uses character sprites and models from that game rather than redeveloped ones.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, it sort of takes those out and then puts them into a sort of flat 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up, which is kind of weird. It's kind of, it's missing that Japanese anime style that Resident Evil Survive had, but it kind of looks cool. I don't think it looks as fun to play. It looks mostly slow and quite difficult and quite frustrating, but yeah, the fact someone's taken the time to make that is quite good. I'll quickly touch on that there are numerous others, but the strangest one, which has a really big fan following, is called Resident Evil 2 Kendo's Cut, and they did another one called Kendo's Cut Uncut. It is fucking bizarre because, right, Kendo's Cut takes the idea of how the events of Raccoon City would have transpired if Robert Kendo had survived the attack at the gun store. Now, what happens is a series of events set during Leon's A scenario perspective, where Kendo pops up here and there, and you actually get to control him too. The follow-up is where things really go fucking crazy, because in Kendo's Cut Uncut, you play as Claire in her B scenario playthrough, and you encounter Kendo and play as him yet again, but this time, the story is just way out there. Kendo is now, you're going to fucking love this, James, honestly, it is fucking batshit. Kendo is now a time-traveling savior with a shotgun which fires rockets. And you see a version of him from the future where he's the president of both the USA and Russia. And you also get to see a future version of Claire who's wearing her Code Veronica outfit. And her partner, honestly, her partner is the giant crocodile from Resident Evil 2.
My God.
There's so much more to it that I can't describe on a podcast. It's like you have to watch it to try and understand it.
I definitely will.
But go and check it out.
Are we to assume then that the DeLorean on the streets belongs to Kendo then?
Quite possibly. The fact that it's right outside his shop pretty much could very well be the case. Maybe you've actually just touched upon an Easter egg there or a seed being planted. So, but yeah, it's just ridiculous. Absolutely fucking batshit. And just go check it out because I can't even put into words how fucking bizarre it is. But anyway, to round off, what kind of legacy has Resident Evil 2 left behind? Well, the concept of a city overrun with the living dead isn't a new concept. We know that. We discussed the many zombie outbreak iterations which inspired the Resident Evil franchise in the first place during our last episodes, but what is it about Resident Evil 2 that has inspired so many other games that have come afterward? Daymare 1998, which released in 2019, is a game most certainly inspired by the concept of a zombie outbreak with shady government conspiracies and corporations. The game takes place. The game takes the over-the-shoulder perspective, however, and as a team who just looks an awful lot like Hunk and his team, running around a town called Keen Sight. I mean, what the fuck is a name called Keen Sight for a town? And it's obviously become infested with zombies. The story's pretty weak, but it tries to incorporate many of the themes of Resident Evil, such as organizations and soldiers and all the rest of it. But Resident Evil 2's story is about the survivors. It's not just about the creatures. It's about a town run towards an apocalyptic end by corruption, shadowy organisations, and clandestine operations. This is the tragedy of Raccoon City and what has been the fuel for not just countless games which have followed and continue to follow, but for the series itself. Not an entry in the series has gone by where the events of Raccoon City haven't been discussed. Not the mansion incident that started it all, it's Raccoon City.
Yeah. It's...
Even the next title being released next year, Resident Evil 9 Requiem, will take the player back to Raccoon City to uncover what has been lurking in the shadows and the ruins ever since. Undoubtedly, the game has left its mark on its players and fans, with many deeming this to be the quintessential Resident Evil experience. With its rich storytelling, characters, setting, and somewhat perfect mix of action and horror, and new fans and old getting to experience the nightmare again with the recent remake, Resident Evil 2, continues to be one of the rare sequels that not only respects its foundations, but improves on them in ways that few follow-ups in any media rarely can. But that concludes our episodes covering Resident Evil 2, and I'd just like to reference our sources, that being the Where's Barry YouTube channel, Avalanche Reviews, Residents of Evil YouTube channels, and the numerous archives of publications such as GameSpot, IGN, CVG, Famitsu, as well as the references I've mentioned along the way. The Resident Evil wiki pages are a great source of info, but I haven't used any information from those pages that doesn't come from an official source, or it can't be cross-referenced with one source or another. But yeah, there we go. That is Resident Evil 2 done.
Whoa.
Yeah. And then we covered a lot there.
That was, a vast amount of information, but lots of very interesting...
You know what? It would have been better to have been in 3 episodes, but everything sort of follows on from one thing to another so seamlessly that it's so hard to find a place to sort of cut it off in places. And I think it would have been better for a lot of people to sort of digest this in 3 episodes, but it's just so hard because it's such a, especially with an episode, with a topic like this, with Resident Evil 2, when you've got that big fucking chunk of history just on Resident Evil 1.5 alone.
Yeah. But
it's so crucial and imperative to Resident Evil 2.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Indispensable context, isn't it, for how what we finally got ended up being.
Couldn't talk about Resident Evil 2 without talking about Resident Evil 1.5, sorry.
No, not at all.
You just can't. There's just so much to it. But we got through it. We've done it. It's covered. And next, it's, of course, Resident Evil 3. Which is going to be...
Nemesis.
Stars. Nice. That was actually pretty good, actually. That was quite impressive. But I'm looking forward to moving on to Resident Evil 3, because that also has its own interesting development cycle. And research is already on for that. So I hope everyone's looking forward to hearing that.
I certainly am.
Yeah, it's going to be good, man. It's going to be good. But did you enjoy that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As always, lots and lots of fun, lots of interesting things, and now I just want to go home and play Resident Evil 2 again. Yeah,
do it, man. Do it. I mean, there's something about playing the original one as well. The remake's great, but there's something about playing the original, which has just got its own thing going on. I love it. I love the original. Playing it on my YouTube channel was great. So fun. And it's a different kind of fun to what the remake gives you. There's a real beauty to that retro feel, for sure. So, anyway, we shall leave it there. And in the meantime, I will say goodbye. James will say goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody.
And until the next time, we'll be talking about Resident Evil 3 and go brush up, go have a play, and be ready for more. And we will see you then. Goodbye.
Bye.